Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 32. I am your host Mo, and I'm joined once again by my wonderfully insightful, if forgetful, friends Jody.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
And Willie.
Good evening. I've got nothing for you tonight.
But it's a hard day.
Well, that's one less translation. I guess, Joe, yours is in English as well. And
Yes, but the accent is heavy.
it is very heavy, yes. Was that character from Princess Bride, was he Spanish?
Yes. He's Inigo
Okay.
Montoya. You can't get any more Spanish than that.
I guess, yes.
Yeah.
I watched that again. What was it, like 2 years ago? Holds up.
Just the other day. Yeah, I watched it again literally like 2 weeks ago, or maybe just 2 months now. I don't know, but more recently than 2 years.
It's pretty funny to think that guy's old mate from Homeland.
Yes.
He's got range.
Yeah.
Guys, this has become sort of like a de facto point of conversation before we ever start the episode proper, and the question of how far have you read ahead?
Ooh.
And I already know that after the last episode, you both had to just read ahead a little bit. So let me hear, just how far ahead have you gone?
Oof, chapter 30.
You haven't finished the book, have you?
No, Willie, you've done it, hey. You've read the book.
No, I didn't. I stopped. I had one mammoth reading over 2 days, and then I parked it at chapter 39. And said, no,
Man,
Oh,
I'll
you're
I'll
ahead
wait
of me,
here.
I think.
Because that last episode ended with like a cliffhanger of note. Hey, like Matt coming out and then just blackness. And then when we start here, no Matt. They're going to leave you again, quote unquote, hanging for a little while longer.
Yeah, I'm on 37, chapter 37. That's,
Okay.
I mean, I
Well,
need
that's
to
not-
start chapter 37 still.
That's not too far ahead.
No, I mean, these chapters get intense, and
Well, to be fair,
They do.
I have the benefit or the unlucky business to be in lockdown for the 6th time, and have a good couple of days at home now again recently to read.
Prime reading time, yeah. Yeah, Joe, you alluded to the fact that the content for this episode is quite intense, and in fact, it is probably going to take on a little bit of a history book vibe. I guess this is as good a time as any to let our listeners know that the structure of this episode is going to be slightly different in that we're not going to just space the chapters out between us evenly. I will take on the first 2 chapters, which primarily deal with Rand's experience within the glass columns in Rhuidean. And then Joe and Willie will bring us home with the homecoming of Perrin returning to Emond's field. So get used to the sound of my voice, I guess. After callbacks in the first two chapters, you might be sick of it. So
yeah,
pause if you have to.
turn off your phones, put your kids to bed, and buckle down.
Light some candles, pour a glass of wine.
No, you just made
Incense.
it weird.
Okay, well, before we get to all that interesting stuff, let's take a little trip down to callbacks. First up, actually, a bevy of listener submissions. We've got a new listener, Jason Hall, and longtime listener Richard Jackson, who's contributed a couple facts to the show before. Both wrote in with some overlapping comments, both of them around the first couple episodes of the story, the beginning of the story. Our new listener, Jason, because he just found our podcast recently and he's been enjoying it and thought he'd write in to contribute. And Richard joined us somewhere in book 2 and has been keeping pace with us, and he has now gone back to start listening to the first episodes again. So we literally have a callback to episode 1.
Whoa.
So,
Well, expect it to come sometime.
yes. So, to all our listeners that are listening right now, don't feel like you need to that like there's a statute of limitations on callbacks or anything like that. If you hear anything or think of anything, or even if I read a callback from someone and you have a counter theory or something to say about that, write in, because chances are it'll make it to air.
Don't encourage it. Don't encourage callbacks on callbacks of callbacks. You know the mattress is going to come back. There's going to be an anonymous submission on the website regarding the mattress, and that
Was it a
was
dark
that-
hound that ate the burnt fade on the
Yeah,
cut up mattress?
I'd love that to come back. Probably more for humor.
Well, I'm honest when I say that I really want this to be a conversation. Like how we always talk about cool stuff in the books, I want the listeners to write in and like basically have a prolonged, if delayed, conversation about it as well. So what these guys both wrote in about specifically is Rand's odd behavior in Bain. And remember when he's sort of like uppity with those white cloaks and it was totally out of character. And back in those days, you know, we thought, is this Lews Therin already sort of like presenting himself? Richard also said the same thing about Rand's behavior when he's having his Lieutenant Dan moment on the mast of the spray, you know, like also just freaking out, doing his funny tumbles and like slide down the rope to get down to the bottom. But both these gents have said that these are pretty obvious symptoms of the channeling sickness. Rand's behavior in Bain is not long after he healed Bella during their flight to like through Watch Hill and all the way up to Tarrant Ferry. And the channeling sickness on the spray would be as a direct result of Rand channeling to save his own life when that Trolloc is about to skewer him and that boom swings around. I think we toyed with the idea of it maybe being a Taverin thing, but it would make sense for in the moment of Rand's desperation for him to be sort of like active in the preservation of his life, and he may have channeled by instinct there. We also, you know, often say that when Rand is channeling by instinct that it could be Lews Therin, but as Richard pointed out, there is a precedent for wilders, which is what Rand would be, like Nynaeve, to actually channel pretty complex weaves by instinct. Nynaeve doesn't have Lews Therin in her head, but she can do complex healing and stuff when the need arises. So we may have been a bit quick on the trigger to say, is this Lews Therin presenting already? Because that's obviously the part that is, you know, drummed into us through the series and what we've retained through the years. And at that point in the story, Nynaeve hadn't had the channeling sickness explained to her by Moiraine yet. It is actually around about the time that they had escaped from Shadow Logoth and Nynaeve joins Moiraine and Lan that she tells her about it. So I think pretty neatly that idea of the channeling sickness fits into the narrative instead of Lews Therin.
So you're saying that if a wilder channels, they enjoy it so much that they get sick from it, because that moment where they are picking fights with police officers and they are climbing masts and shouting at the world is very much sounds like overindulgence to me.
Well, it's just like the symptoms of channeling sickness are odd behavior and even fevers and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, well, yeah, apparently. And then later when Rand is on the apple carts after the Four Kings incident, you know, like where he's channeled a massive amount and he basically does a big area of effect attack and kills all those dark friends that were surrounding them in Four Kings when they're trapped in that basement. It's not long after that he is really, really sick on the apple carts. And I think it's Jason that wrote in and said that the sort of time jumping stuff that, you know, I have maligned so much over time, which has become a topic of great enjoyment for Willie to bring up every time with the apple carts all the time, is purposefully done, or Jason thinks it's purposefully done by Robert Jordan to represent Rand's own confusion, because Rand is also delirious at the time, and, you know, time, you know, being all messed up in his head could present in a sort of like time jumpy way on the page.
Well, considering the power, the immensity to bring down that lightning in that incident over there, you would be really drunk on the power then. Like coming off a bender, lying in the back of a cart, traveling home, and you don't know what day it is.
All been there.
I'm loving this this channeling intoxication analogy
cops.
that you have going. Yeah.
It's working because it
Passed out
sounds,
in the back of someone's car,
I've got
all very
photos of
familiar.
some of us in those positions.
waking up in strange places.
What else did these guys say? Oh, Jason also thinks that Moraine does immediately recognize Tom in Emond's field. And Tom obviously recognizes, if not Moraine personally, that she is Aes Sedai. And that in the first episode, I think we said that they're sort of treating each other cordially or with respect. It is, according to Jason, he thinks them straight up playing the game of houses already. Like, okay, I won't tell your secret if you won't tell mine. Like, they're both aware of who the other is. And that, Moraine quite likely actually knows who Tom is. Being from Kyrian herself, being, moving in noble circles, she would know who the court bard, who is famously good at the game of houses, would be in Camelin and all that sort of stuff, which is an interesting thought. Means that their relationship kind of already starts in that moment in like, oh, that's that person. Okay, mutual respect, that sort of thing. Yeah, just always interested in all the interplay between Moraine and Tom because of how quickly they spring that relationship on us.
It's interesting that it's they're obviously have got something there that she's attracted to him, maybe like sapiosexual in a way that he plays that game so good that really does it for Moraine in a man.
Yeah, I mean, there's a section here that I'm going to talk about in the callbacks about, we sort of speculated about whether we would ever know what Moraine was told or asked to the Elfin. But in my sort of research, I found the letter and I read the letter that Moraine left Tom. And it is super affectionate. Like, she is in love with him. And it comes out of nowhere. No, not today. We'll get there.
Oh, right. Okay, now I'll have to go read it myself then. I don't remember that letter at all. I remember there was a letter, but not anything that was in it.
So speaking of Tom, Richard also had some comments about our most recent episode in which, Nynaeve was sort of bullying Tom quite badly. And Willie reminded us that, she only knows him as the Gleeman from Emond's Field, really. Like, he hasn't saved her from any fades or anything like that. And Richard just wanted to point out again a fact that most people sort of gloss over, in that we sort of say, oh, that's just Nynaeve's way. And I think we have actually gone as far as saying on one of our episodes in the past that Nynaeve has always had to sort of try to bully people because she's never taken seriously because of how young she looks. But Richard was saying that, she might look even younger than what you imagine because she channeled for the first time when she was 16. And the slowing down of her age would already have begun. So she might be 26, but only look 18 sort of thing.
Or still look 16, yeah.
Or still look 16, yeah. So she sort of, she's always had to try to prove her stature, maybe, in Emond's Field, like around the village council and the women's circle and that sort of thing. It's also something that I read about where her braid tugging comes from. I don't know if we've mentioned it on the show before, but you know how it's only when a girl becomes a woman in Emond's Field that she can braid her hair. And she started that tick or that habit, tugging her braid subconsciously because she was subconsciously trying to bring attention to it. When people looked at her or treated her like a girl, she's tugging on her braid to remind them that she's a woman.
Whoa, that's deep, man. Never thought of that.
Pretty cool, hey?
Yeah.
Richard also wrote in with a couple small ones. Remember we asked who is Anla in that speech that Tom gives Elaine, and Joe, you said it was that agony aunt. It was specifically a woman by the name of Anne Landers. She ran, or she actually, there were I think a couple people that wrote under that nom de plume for 56 years. Yeah. So like in a nationally syndicated agony aunt column in the US, so like all major papers published it for 56 years. So yes, that is something that could stand the test of time and sort of, present as a myth in Randland. And then Richard just wanted to let us know that Moraine does in fact know her fate with Lanfear, which is revealed in the letter to Tom that I read. She mentions that we are now going down to the docks where I will face Lanfear. She says it. So that is obviously something that the Aelfin would have told her. There's no other way that she could know that with such certainty. She talks to Tom about them coming to rescue her from the Tower of Genji and the specific circumstances that need to be met for that to be a success. So, yeah, she was given quite a lot of insight from the Aelfin. Who knows what the context was for that answer, like what she had actually asked him? That I don't know, but yeah, she's got some prescient knowledge. We spoke a little bit about like dream walking and where are places that dreamwalkers would not be able to go, because we read that they can't go to Steading. And Joe, you said maybe Shal Ghul is one of those places. That would make sense. Rowan wrote in and he said, what about Shaunchan and Shara? These places that are, completely unknown. Maybe Shaunchan is a bit of a stretch since people don't know that it actually exists. But Shara, the Dreamwalkers certainly would know about, certainly the Aiel. And who knows, maybe they have actually gone there. But, someone like Perrin or Egwene could, from the wetlands, even if they can't picture something there to appear there, immediately, could travel with the sort of like the advantages of Tel'aran'rhiod. How Perrin sort of like runs ahead, like we will see in one of these chapters. You could do that all the way to Shara and go, check it out. What is this party town that no one wants to leave?
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem. You'll never leave. Even in Tel'aran'rhiod, it's a party.
Speaking of Rowan, another mutual friend of ours and Rowan's, Kerry Katz, wrote in a couple of weeks ago actually saying that she thinks the dream that Egwene had of Perrin fighting a man who's constantly changing his faces, she also thought was Paden Fain and not necessarily Slayer. And I think, Jody, you also thought it might be Paden Fain. I sort of dismissed it out of hand, but the more I think about it, the wording certainly would sound like someone with more than just two faces, which is Luke and Isom for Slayer. But Paden Fain has shown many, many aspects of his personality already. Then I've got a bunch of quick hits. Okay. Hello, are you sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Is indeed the intro to Good Times by Sprung Monkey.
Yes.
I went and listened to that again. That song does not age well.
I haven't listened to it in ages.
I've fond memories of that time of my life, but I'm not going to be putting that song on a playlist anytime soon.
All right.
I made a big mistake in the last episode. Well, it's not huge or earth-shattering, but I certainly called out the rocking of the boat that, as a result of Rand plunging Kalandor into the heart of the stone. I mentioned it in the callback section as if it happened in the previous episode, but we only covered it later in that episode.
No one noticed.
Except old Mr. Perrin. Yes. Villy, a ship railing is called a taffrail.
Ah.
There you go. Jody, it is Narishma who collects Kalandor for Rand later.
Yes.
You got
Thanks,
that one
Twitter.
right. Hey, another one you got right, Jody. What is 50 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit? You just guessed and said 120. It's 122.
Huh. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, look at you go.
I know.
Ruach's wife, Lian, is Avienda's aunt. We were sort of like circling that one. She is. Does Pips survive the last battle? Yes.
Oh, thank God.
And then we sort of like, when we're talking about Moiraine and like what she knew about her own death and what that would mean for passing the bond, Lan's bond, onto Morel instead of Nynaeve, we said that we knew that Moiraine passed her bond to Morel because she suspected, or not suspected, but in case she dies, Lan would be bonded to another Aes Sedai. And then later, after the revelations from the Aelfin, we speculated that she had a much more clear idea of how or when she would die, which, this Tom's letter and her talking about Lanfear directly would also sort of allude to. And I was just wondering, like, why Morel? And it turns out there are a couple really good reasons. First of all, they were novices together and they were friends. Moiraine, Morel, and Swan were all friends. And so she's obviously someone that Moiraine trusts. Morel has also helped some other warders who had lost their Aes Sedai. So Morel has this like reputation as being someone that can keep a warder from dying not long after their Aes Sedai have died. Because they either, throw themselves into battle that they have no chance of winning, or kill themselves, or, like become so depressed that they're not worth anything to anyone. So Morel has some experience, and I think at one point when we get to the last battle, Morel has something like 6 warders, like much more than any other green even. And I think she's secretly married to 3 of them. Something along those lines. Super into warders, old Morel.
That's why Lan does not want to go there. He's heard the talk amongst the other warders.
Oh, God, I'm going to put my foot in it now and pull the old pincushion closer, because I'm sure I read somewhere that Morel actually tries to bed Lan.
Well, he is a fine piece of ass. She would have.
He is, but he's in love with Nynaeve.
Yes.
And Morel actually also later tries to help Nynaeve break her block. She, still holding onto Lan's bond, tries to prepare Nynaeve for being ready to accept the bond. So she helps Nynaeve to work on her block. And after Nynaeve is raised to the shawl, Morel still doesn't think that she's ready and doesn't pass the bond immediately. It's only after some time when Nynaeve comes to Morel and demands it that Morel finally passes the bond over to Nynaeve. Another thing people have said is, like, they wouldn't know if Nynaeve had to go through the actual the test to be raised to Aes Sedai from accepted, what would happen to Lan during that test, because no accepted had a bonded warder and go through the test to become Aes Sedai yet. So that was another reason to hold off on giving it to Nynaeve. So there's some actual really like practical reasons that make Moiraine's actions seem a little less dickish.
Yeah.
A little.
Just a little.
Okay, that's it for callbacks.
Ah,
Wow. Billy was getting into them.
Yeah, you look disappointed for the first time ever. Okay, so previously on Blood and Ashes, Nynaeve, Elaine, Tom, and Julian board a Seafolk Raker and set sail for Tanchico. Rand stuns the Terran nobility by committing the Terran army to a peacekeeping and humanitarian mission to Kyrian before slamming a booby-trapped Kalandor into the floor of the Heart of the Stone. He then takes the Aiel, Mat, Egwene, Moiraine, and Lan to Rhuidean via a portal stone. They meet 4 Wise Ones, and Rand, Mat, Avienda, and Moiraine all head into Rhuidean for different reasons, while Couladin and the Shido collectively seethe at this apparent slight to the Shido. And inside Rhuidean, Mat enters the realm of the Eelfin, not understanding the bargain at all, and after some demands finds himself in pitch blackness, unable to breathe. And that's how the last episode ended. Which brings us now to chapter 25, The Road to the Spear. Now, before we get stuck in there, I've had, like I mentioned before to you guys, our friend Jethro oft mentioned on this podcast, because he's reading the books as we speak, but is not allowed to listen to the podcast so that he doesn't get anything spoiled for him. He phoned me up and he asked me, what the hell just happened? Like, I read these 2 chapters and I had to like listen to the audiobooks a couple times and I still don't know what's going on. Super fan Avienda, Adrian, she also wrote in saying, I can't wait to hear what you say about these chapters, because she's also always been kind of confused by them. And I think I myself have always been confused by them. It is something that you read through them. I mean, it's 2 whole chapters dedicated to basically this phenomenon. But you read through them and you're like, okay, cool, I get the gist of it. The Aiel started here and then something happened and then they ended up here. But reading it this time, I was actually blown away by how many little bits and pieces are strewn throughout these little excerpts, these little short stories that manifest in the Aiel culture that we know today. He said, as if the Aiel are walking the streets in current time.
Totally
in the future. So what I thought would help maybe clear up some of what is happening in these chapters is I'm going to tell these stories in reverse order, which is to say, in actual chronological order. Because in the visions, Rand has stepped into the glass columns and he starts having these visions, right? And he has a vision of something that happened in the not too distant past. And then as he progresses through the columns, the next vision is set before the one he just had, and then the next one and the next one. Much like the movie Memento. If anyone's watched Memento,
Yes.
it's the exact same principle. I don't know, maybe Christopher Nolan actually read The Wheel of Time because it is the exact same phenomenon. Even with, like in Memento, you have the scenes that are in black and white that do play in forward chronological order. Here, Rand walks through the columns and he's catching up to Muradin, who is Couladin's brother?
I think so.
I think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it. Muradin is busy. He's doing his clan chief trial. So he's walking through the columns as well. And as Rand is progressing deeper and deeper into the columns, he is sort of catching up to Muradin. And Muradin goes from bad to worse as you read about it. He's not having a good time at all. So for the purpose of this sort of like reverse order that I'm going to tell this stuff in, I'm going to leave the Muradin sightings out. I'm going to focus just on the actual visions and tell them in again, chronological order. So starting at the oldest vision, which is the furthest back in time, which is actually the last vision that Rand has at the end of chapter 26.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with chapter 26 now, and I will tell the story backwards through chapter 25. If you weren't confused before, I bet you are now.
No, listen, I paid special attention to these chapters and I read it several times, and I had the companion guide next to me because now I'm seriously looking forward to what you have to say, because like what you mentioned, all those little bits and pieces, I noticed them as well. So let's get into this.
I don't know, man. I don't know why you guys are so confused by this. It's just a story that's told in reverse.
Yeah.
It's little stories with people that grow younger.
Well, on this read through, the reason I'm making so much effort with this is because this really actually did click for me in a way that I don't think it had before. Certainly not in my 16, 17-year-old mind. And I can't remember it from the 10, 11 years ago that I reread the series. Not in this level of detail. So now, like much of the story, we're going to try and wring every last little bit of joy out of it so that we don't ever have to do this again. So without much further ado, the one thing I should say for anyone that's read the story, obviously, is that obviously these visions happen in first person. So when Rand is having these visions, he is the person who the point of view is from, often even feeling their physical pain and emotional pain as well. So when he comes out of the visions, he's still feeling the effects of what happened. I should also say that at the end of chapter 26, when Rand emerges from the glass columns, there's a short section there where he recovers Mat. And that will happen at the end of this whole section. So I'll cover the whole history of the Aiel, and then we'll stop and talk about that. And then I'll quickly cover the little Mat section, and then we'll be done with Rhuidean.
All right. The suspense, Moritz. Get on with it.
Yeah, this is not going to be worth the build-up at all. Okay, we begin with the point of view of an Aiel man named Charn, who is making his way down a crowded street beneath rows of chora trees. So first of all, chora trees are like a Vendosora. They're the legendary trefoil leaf tree that spread a sense of peace and well-being beneath them. Already, I have something to say. In the Age of Legends, where everything was peaceful, was that because they were mass drugging the population? If chora trees were everywhere and calming everyone down, were they just suppressing
Keeping the peace.
Human nature?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of uncool.
Well, is it really? Dark friend opinion over here.
They were using the one power as well to rehabilitate criminals. There wasn't much crime, but when there was, they would basically brainwash them into not doing it again.
Yeah, you're not making a good argument for them.
No, that wasn't my
benevolent.
intention. I'm confirming your suspicions.
Yeah, I mean, it's just reading this, like, because they're always talking about, like, walking under the rows of chora trees, and it was all a land of peace and prosperity. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, it's because they're drugging them. This is like the Soma of this world. Anyway, so this is obviously set in the Age of Legends. There are Joe cars humming up and down the streets. Apparently, Joe cars, some of them actually had 3 or 4 wheels, and some of them were sort of like hover cars. And there's a white show wing flies through the air, carrying passengers to some far-off destination. Very reminiscent of an aeroplane. Charn is 25 years old, and he's planning on accepting. He's walking down the street, planning on accepting Nala's latest offer of marriage. Already, we see here Aiel custom, the women ask, not the men.
Yeah.
He's put off accepting her proposal for a year because it would actually mean switching his service to Nala's Aes Sedai, Zor-El, because the Aiel in the Age of Legends served the Aes Sedai. So his wife-to-be serves an Aes Sedai different from his, and if he says yes to her marriage proposal, he would then start serving her Aes Sedai, because the Aes Sedai he currently serves is Mirren, Lanfear.
Mm-hmm.
This comes back to haunt him later. So as he's walking, he's knocked over by a gruff man with a woman who's sort of walking arm in arm with a woman. And when he knocks Charn over, he's sort of, rude to him and stuff. And the woman realizes, she says, look, no, he's Aiel. And the man suddenly changes his tune completely. And she's wearing Streeth, that fabric that Grandal wears later in the story, that is like sometimes completely see-through and other times not, and it changes color depending on your mood. Her dress goes completely opaque as she becomes sort of embarrassed about what they have done to this Aiel man. And this Charn, the guy that knocked Charn over is also wearing a fan cloth cloak, which is a color shifting cloak worn by the warders.
Mm-hmm.
So Fancloth makes another appearance a bit later. So all these little bits and pieces sprinkled in here. So I can't remember, Joe, do you remember at all if there's ever a mention where the warders' cloaks come from? Are they remnants of the Age of Legends? Like, I don't know if the Aes Sedai can make them anymore.
They do make them.
They do? Oh, okay.
They do.
Okay. So Charn gets up after this guy's knocked him over and he goes, no, don't worry. I should have been more attentive, because the Aiel follow the way of the leaf. They are completely averse to any kind of confrontation. And he's sort of saying, don't worry, it was my own fault. The gruff man addresses Charn as Dashane, which is, the old name for the Aiel. And as we said, they follow the way of the leaf. And as they're sort of having this exchange, the ground beneath their feet and even the air ripples. And the man looks sort of worried and he pulls his fancloth cloak around himself a little tighter. But Charn is already sort of not bolted from the scene, but he's sort of already rushed off and he's pushing through the crowd towards the Sharom, which is a giant white sphere 1,000 feet in diameter, floating 1,000 feet above the Column Dan, which is this huge university. And I always thought that this Sharom, which you only read in the context of this little vignette, like this little story of Lanfear drilling a hole in the bore, that it was floating above the Column Dan because of their prowess with the one power. But the one power is not actually used to float it at all. It's all done with gravitational and magnetic fields. Like, it's a thing of science, not a thing of magic. Yeah, cool, hey?
Yeah.
So this is a place, the Sharom was accessed via either Jokar or by traveling, capital T traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a place reserved for only like the most cutting edge experimentation and research and stuff done at this huge, massive university that was sprawled out below it. And as Charn is looking at it, he's sort of rushing towards it because he can see something is wrong. A piece of white, like a white chip, flies off it, followed by this huge gout of inky black flame. And then suddenly more and more chips, and the whole thing actually breaks like an egg as it seems to float down, like it's deceptively slow, but it's actually crashing down onto the university below it, and everything is engulfed in black flame. And there's actually, like, it blots out the sun. Like, there is suddenly this just inky black fire everywhere. And this is obviously the moment at which Lanfear or Mirren and Baidomon, is her research partner, had drilled the hole into the bore. And from that moment forward, the Dark One had an effect on our world. Shoo! Okay, so pretty big moment.
Yeah. Later, Baidomon commits suicide.
He does?
Yeah. I don't know if it's because of his guilt he feels or whatever, but I can't remember the reason why, but he kills himself. It's like, I've had enough of this shit. Cheers.
Pretty safe bet. Yeah. Next, we jump forward in time when Charn is now an old man. So he was 25 here. He's now an old man, but we're in the point of view of a 16-year-old boy called Kuman, Chan is Cumin's dad's grandfather.
Easy.
Okay, so yeah, it's his great grandfather. So this is set 3 generations after the boar was created.
Yeah.
So quite a long time later, and later in these visions, they also allude to the fact that the Aiel live very, very long. One of the guys later is 63 and described as in his prime, not old enough yet for a gray hair.
Yeah.
So for Chan to be really old, this is like a couple of 100 years?
Yeah.
Don't know.
The War of Power, I want to say, is 300 years, I think it was.
There's a lot of time weirdness here when we start talking about like trying to fit these things on a timeline. The War of Power is a tricky one. We'll get to that again. So anyway, Cumin is 16. He's wearing his work clothes that are described very much like the Chiad and Loial. And he is standing in a huge circle of men and Ogier. So it's all Aiel men like himself kneeling around this field. There's 10 of them, all standing 2 or 3 meters apart, or kneeling 2 or 3 meters apart. 10 Aiel, then an Ogier, then 10 Aiel, then an Ogier, all the way around. And he can see other fields that are also circled in exactly the same way. Between these fields, there are like armored jokars with soldiers with shock lances and fancloth cloaks and insectoid helmets with shock visors and stuff. This is full-on sci-fi that they are describing here, like hover cars, armored hover cars with shock lances and stuff, and soldiers standing in between them. Cumin is fascinated by the soldiers because they kill, and to him this is like, whoa, so weird. His great-grandfather, Chan, said that there were no soldiers once, nor were there even Madral or Trollocs, all forsaken. And the Dark One had even been locked away. So, he hadn't touched the world yet. But Cumin could not imagine a time with no war. So, in Cumin's life, so for at least 16 years, there has always been this war. And it's probably longer, considering how old Chan is now and him being 25 when the boar was created. Chan also told stories of serving Lanfear and Ishmael before they were evil, but people did not like hearing that kind of thing at all. And fair enough. I mean, Chan, maybe keep those to yourself. And then one of the Nim approaches. Walking into this field that Cumin is standing around is none other than Someshta, the Green Man. So this Nim walking in here is the Green Man. And the Ogier start the song. They start to sing. And the Aiel men join in. And the Zemai field starts to sprout. And the crop that they are growing here, Zemai being an anagram for maize, is a maize-like crop. It will now, because of the singing, not be touched by any kind of blight. Blight is the word that's used. No sickness will befall these plants, and no insect pests will ever have any effect on them. It's basically like a foregone conclusion that it would yield massive gains or massive yields, and it'll grow like twice the height of a man. So it's just like by singing the song while the Nim dance in the field, they are basically raising a super crop. This is obviously the song that the Tinkers are looking for. Right? This is when they talk about the days of old, when they had all the singing. This is what they're talking about. And after the singing is completed, Cumin notices that there are no townspeople around anymore. But the Aiel women come out to congratulate them and to say, job well done, and sort of clap them on the back. And he sees one of the Ogier walk over to a soldier who's wearing a sort of insectoid helmet with the mandibles covering his face, which is an interesting description considering the fact that the Sean Chan helmets are also described as insect-like. I mean,
but they were all part of the same people, remember?
Yeah.
Initially, the Sean Chan fled from there, so it may have been that majority made up of faction of the Navy that wore those helmets that had ships to flee.
Someone from Arthur Hawkwing's army found a helmet and then started modeling their helmets after it. Like there is definitely a lineage there. What that lineage looks like, who knows? But it's cool to see these little links between.
It's hard to break off something as potent like the predator-shaped helmet with that mouth. Nothing's more fearful than that.
So the Ogier asks this soldier if there's any news, and the soldier says there are unconfirmed reports that Lews Therin and the 100 companions have sealed the boar, and that the war is over. Never mind the fact that there are still Trollocs and Midral around, but the Forsaken have been sealed in the bore with the Dark One. I'm assuming this is why there are no townsfolk around at the moment. They've maybe heard the news since the singing started, and they, as Cumin finds out when he goes back to town, are celebrating the streets. You know, everyone is super excited about this quote-unquote unconfirmed report. But this makes Cumin think, okay, I need to go see Chan. Like, he'd want to know this. You know, I need to go see what his reaction is to this sort of thing. So he rushes back to the town. But on his way, he is, I think, punched in the face. Like, something knocks him over, and it's a townsperson sort of holding their hand and wringing their hand. And Cumin is sort of like, what's going on? And this person is standing over him going, aha, they've sealed all the Forsaken away now. So now we don't have to pretend like, you know, like we will tolerate you Forsaken serving Aiel anymore. We will deal with you. We will root you out and we will deal with you just like we dealt with that old man. And that sort of sends a shiver down Cumin's throat, back. And he runs off to the inn that he knows Chan was staying in. Heartbreaking scene, goes in there looking for him, can't find him, goes outside and he finds him hanging from a tree, lynched by one of these townsfolk mobs.
Yeah, a little bit of celebration sprinkled with some murder. Typical.
You know. Human nature. Then we jump forward to the point of view of Jonai, the son of Cumin from the previous vision. And in this one, Jonai is 63, in the prime of his life, as it states here, not yet old enough for grey hairs. And Willie, whenever I read Jonai, I think of you calling him Jonai in one of our old episodes. Could have been one of the first, you know, like it's certainly from the first book, I think. You make reference to what actually transpires here. So we join Jonai as he's rushing through the ruined streets of is it Perrin and something along those lines. Basically the capital, the sort of the main city of the Age of Legends. And it's the home of the Hall of Servants, so the seat of power for the Aes Sedai. And that is, in fact, where he is heading. There are still aftershocks. So this is like the first clear indication of the actual breaking, right? So Lews Therin and the 100 companions sealed the bore, but the Dark One lashed out, tainted the source, and the male channelers are going crazy and busy breaking the world. Now, here is a time inconsistency. It is stated by Robert Jordan in some of the companion books, or in the novels proper, that Belal was responsible for raising the Hall of Servants. But here, a long time after he was sealed away, the Hall of Servants is still standing. So people have come up with theories about, you know, the Hall of Servants is it's like a church, you know, the building is not what's important, it's the function that it portrays. But in this chapter, it is described as the one with the big columns outside and the large doors and all that sort of stuff. So most people seem to think that this is a bit of an anachronism, like an inconsistency. But anyway, this is where Jonai is going.
Raised and rebuilt. A lot of time has passed.
People have said that a lot of time has passed, but this is not the kind of time during which you take the time to build a building. You know, like it's the war of power. Trollocs and Midral are all over the place. People seem kind of panicked. And in fact, when Jonai enters the Hall of Servants here as well, it is like a kicked ant's nest, right? People are running around. Everyone's looking nervous. The Chora trees are all burnt. He straight up refers to the clothing he's wearing as his Caden saw. So like that name comes from quite a ways back since, you know, breaking times. But he runs into the Hall of Servants and he rushes upstairs to a nondescript door that he opens, and he walks in and he walks into a meeting of 6 arguing Aes Sedai, notably all of them women. And they're standing around a long table on which is lying the dragon banner and a certain crystal sword that, you know,
from
we
Minecraft.
all know what it is.
Yes.
Yes. Diamond sword.
He actually wonders, like, what is that banner doing here? And actually shudders at the thought of that cursed man. Like, quote, this is what he calls him, that cursed man, Lews Therin Telemon. So these Aes Sedai are having a vigorous conversation, ostensibly about a foretelling that one of them, Deandre Sedai, had about the part that the Aiel would have to play in preserving the wheel itself from the shadows. She said this important foretelling, and they're sort of quizzing her, like, do you have any more information? And she's like, no, I don't. I just know that the following needs to happen. and we need to try and make it happen. Another sister, Sulenda Sedai, sort of calms everyone down, stating that the time of contention among themselves is past because 2 male Aes Sedai, Jarek and Hyendar, will be there tomorrow. They need to act because these men are already crazy, and they need to act before these guys get there because they are going to destroy the city. 2 of them, that's pretty hectic. While they're talking, Jonai turns his attention to the other occupant of the room, which is Someshta, and he greets him, in a friendly way because they know each other, and he reminds Someshta that you used to carry me on your shoulders, but Someshta doesn't remember, and he's already got the scar that we read about in the Eye of the World. He's already got it here, and his memory seems affected. He doesn't remember Jonai at all. He sort of just goes, was there singing? I remember singing. And he seems rather out of it. And while he's sort of talking to Someshta, Celinda actually calls him over and asks if everything is ready. He confirms, but he tries to convince her that some of the Aiel want to actually stay and serve. But she says to him, remember what Jarek did at a city called Sora, where he killed 10,000 Aiel who were locked arm in arm, singing to him in a vain attempt to try and remind him of who they were and who he was. They stood there getting killed by him, rows upon rows of them, trying to convince him that violence is not the way and trying to remind him who he was. And the story goes that this Jarek guy listened to the last Aiel for an hour before destroying him. But the time that the Aiel won by performing this act gave the people of the city enough time to escape. And after that, Jarek turned that city, Sora, into a sheet of glass. Like he just melted the entire thing. Brutal. Hey, like 10,000 Aiel destroyed. So Celinda instructs Jonai to take the things that they had given the Aiel and to keep moving until they find a place of safety where no one can harm them, and to stay committed to the way of the leaf. And Jonah is like, of course we will stay committed to the way of the leaf. That is who we are. To abandon the way of the leaf is to abandon who we are. Prophetic words, because that's going to happen. So it turns out that, what's his name? Cumin.
I love that. Like the spice.
Like
and his brother, Paprika.
Yeah. So Jonah's father was Cumin, who we know from the previous vision. He had abandoned the way and was actually hiding in the city with an old shock lance. Like he is fighting, which is interesting because it was him that was fascinated by the soldiers.
Yeah.
So even at 16, standing around the field, he was sort of like fascinated by the soldiers. Here he is during the breaking going, okay, I'm abandoning the way. I'm going to fight back. The first signs of Aiel picking up weapons and actually abandoning the way.
And a lance is basically a spear.
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
It's like he's got his spear.
Fitting.
And there's also, you said interject. I'm interjecting.
Please.
When Cumin was talking about how fascinated he was by the soldiers, the humans and the Ogier, he mentions in that book. So
yes.
there were Ogier soldiers back then as well, like
yes.
the Sean Chan have now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He in that scene, I know we're jumping back now just to confuse things a bit more, but he was talking in that scene. Is it Cumin or Kulin? Cumin. He was talking about how he was tested for being able to channel at the age of 10.
Yeah.
And that he was not found to have the spark. And when he was looking at the soldier, he realized that the soldier was only a couple of years older than him. He would also have been chosen at 10. So from 10 years old, those soldiers were being raised to fight Shadowspawn, and just how hectic that is.
It's like
but Ogier soldiers as well.
Spartans, raised from birth to be warriors.
Yeah. Before Jonah leaves, he hears the Aes Sedai speak of basically what they're going to do with the help of some young male Aes Sedai who are not yet affected by the taint. They are talking about creating the Eye of the World.
Yeah.
And using those young males to create a reservoir of Sidin that is untainted. And they sort of say, first of all, the sword must wait. So they're going to do something with Kalandor later. And they then task Someshta with guarding the eye. They don't say it here, but they say, we have one last job for you. And having read the Eye of the World, it's cool to know, oh, yeah, Green Man, that's where you get your mission. So Jonai exits the city and joins the thousands of wagons loaded and ready to leave. He's approached by many Aiel asking to stay, sort of mumbling about Cumin, saying, Cumin's here, we could stay and help him. But Jonai says, no, we have to leave. We have to stick to the oaths that we've made to the Aes Sedai. So already here, also seeing some like potential for dissent, like Aes Sedai, not Aes Sedai, Aiel already talking about like maybe we should actually do something here, but they don't. So Jonah makes his way to his own wagon, which is sort of at the head of one of these long columns. His kids are there: Willem, who's 15, Adan, who's 10, and little Isol, who is a little girl that's still got a doll. She seems really young. They don't say her age, but she's really young. And his wagon, so Jonai's wagon, as with all the other wagons, has a bunch of chora cuttings in them. So they're keeping these trees as a symbol of hope, because all men need a symbol of hope to aspire to. So that's what Avendasora means to the Aiel. His wife is also there, Elnora, and she seems to be a dreamer. And in a lot of these visions, the women are dreamers. So, it seems like this trait is especially common among the Aiel, which fits our understanding of the quote-unquote modern Aiel as well. And he actually straight up asks her if she's dreamed anything, and she gives a very vague sort of, don't worry, all will be well sort of answer, but you can read between the lines because she is being extremely non-committal with her answer. And the Aiel begin their journey from there with their wagons loaded full of Angreal and Chora trees.
And Sir Angreal and to Angreal. Like, there's like, I think they said there's like 10,000 wagons, or there's 1,000 wagons and 10,000 Aiel, like, and every one of them is packed to the rafters with objects of the power.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. That's a lot.
You see the redstone doorway in one of these visions.
Yeah, later on.
So then we jump ahead again, and now Jonai is fully grey, so a lot older than 63. His wife, Elnora, is dead. His youngest, Isol, died without any kind of Aes Sedai healing available to help her. His eldest son, Willem, had started channeling years ago and was sent away, and only his middle child, Adan, remains. So already Jonai, outside of the protective embrace of the Aes Sedai, starting to feel the harshness of the world out there, and demonstrating just how vulnerable these Aiel are in the outside world. At this stage, they've lost many thousands in numbers and wagons, to the point where nobody rode now, save small children who couldn't yet walk. So here we see the beginnings of the Aiel being averse to horse riding, right? Like none of them ride, they all walk. So through natural selection, only the ones that can walk very far and for long, would survive, and therefore their children would inherit those genes. So they're a bunch of cross-country loving motherfuckers.
Yes.
Adan tells his father about a group of Ogier that have come from the north. And Adan had never actually met an Ogier. They are scarce and extremely scattered. The group of Ogier is bedraggled, and they actually start to talk about the longing. Jonai thinks about the last time he saw an Aes Sedai, which is shortly after Elnora's death. And the Aes Sedai at that time had said that Ishamal was not entirely trapped, and maybe not trapped at all. And even her dress was sort of like patched and mended and stuff. So even the Aes Sedai at this point were looking like they were in pretty rough shape. But here we have an account of an Aes Sedai, probably from the Age of Legends, saying straight up, Ishamal, not trapped. So Moraine's suspicions are correct.
And she also just stole some Angreal and then left. Like, I'll take some of this shit with me. Cheers, Oz. You're on your own again. And then left the Aiel.
Yeah.
Went off on her own little side mission.
Yeah, thanks for nothing. She also seemed half crazed, to the point that Jonai thought she might also be affected by the taint.
Yeah.
There's also still a war that's on the go at that stage.
Yes, and
so
the breaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
so if you're an Aes Sedai trying to fight all of that, and you come across 1,000 wagons laden with tools to help you
score,
battle, of course you're going to go, where's that balefire rod right now? Give me that thing.
That fluted rod.
Yeah. Isn't this part also start with, is it Jonai? Is that his name? I'm sorry, I have to go check. He's standing overlooking where Tazora used to be, that city.
Another
against the
city,
mountain?
not Sora, but another one that's like on the
It was
coastline, on a
the
like hangs
third
over the
greatest
sea from a
city.
mountain.
It's
Yeah,
just gone. And the sea is 100 leagues west of where it was the last time we saw the city. Like,
Yep.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, they actually talk about some of that. The Ogier say that the north is bad. The blight has grown. There are Trollocs and Madrol everywhere. So they ask these Aiel where they come from, and Jonai says we've come from the east, and there it's not good either. They were robbed of a third of their horses, so they had to abandon some of the wagons. And he thinks that south, about I think 10 leagues south, was a sea, but then he thinks to himself, is it even still there?
Yeah.
Don't know. Like, things are changing so badly, like I can't count on the sea being there. Unfortunately, Jonai knows of no steading for the Ogier, which is what they're asking about when they say like they're starting to feel a longing in their bones. It's before they've even given the longing its name. And they fear that they will die without the steading. So they are in dire straits. And the futility of everything seems to come crashing home for Jonai as he's thinking about this. And he has what seems like a heart attack. Like, he feels a pain in his chest, and he sags to his knees and he's holding his chest. But he pulls his son Adon close, and he charges him with taking the Aiel south and keeping their oaths to the Aes Sedai. And Jonai dies, hoping that Celinda Sedai knows that they tried to keep their oath. Then we jump ahead now to the point of view of his son Adon, who is now a grandfather himself. This is depressing. Clutching his dead son's children, right? So Adon is now old. He had a son of his own. That son is now dead, killed by the first arrow shot at them that morning. And he is clutching the two kids, Maegrin, who is 5, and Lewin, who is 6, who are crying. Some of the wagons that they were traveling with are actually on fire. There are dead people lying everywhere, and there are still men with swords, spears, and bows who are there busy loading women onto empty wagons after like casting out the ungril that the tarangril, sangril, and stuff that they can't see any use for, tucking that stuff on the ground and then loading the wagons with the women. And Adon actually watches them load his only surviving child, Rhea, his daughter, into a wagon. He had already lost 4 other children. Elwyn died of hunger at 10. Sorel died at 20 of a fever that she had dreamed was coming. So even though knowing it was coming, she still died from it. Jaren threw himself off a cliff after he found out he could channel. And Marind was another child of his killed that very morning. So he's got 1 daughter left, and these men are loading her on a wagon to take her off to do God knows what. So he stays down with the little kids and he watches as the wagons leave. And only when the wagons have left, he tells the kids to wait there. And he gets up and he goes and he finds now also his dead wife, Sidre, among the bodies. And another Aiel man, Sulwyn, a tall man, demands from Adon, what do we do now? Adon says, we bury the dead and we move on. And Sulwyn says, why? How? We've got no horses. We've got no food. What are these fucking things that we're carting around everywhere? And Adon snaps at him and goes, we have legs. We will continue. Again, pointing the way to that like famed Aiel stamina for running. But Sulwyn and his followers, they don't buy it. They're over it. They discard some of the ungril themselves, and they take some of the wagons, and they effectively become the Tinkers, because Adon says to them, you're not Aiel because you're abandoning our oath. But Sulwyn defends their adherence to the way of the leaf, saying that we will go and we will find the songs of old, but we're not going to cart these things around anymore. So this is literally the start of the Tuatha An. And one of the ungril here that they discard is the redstone doorway. Yeah. Which is pretty crazy to think they could walk through, any one of them could walk through the doorway and ask for some stuff and they would have it.
This whole time.
Can I have a Jokar? Or a show wing to fly to Rhuidean? But basically this chapter ends with Adon weeping, holding his dead wife, wondering how long they can be faithful to their oath to the Aes Sedai, thinking at least Maegrin and Lewin's mother had survived. So his son, their dad, had died, but Maegrin and Lewin's mom had survived, and she was not carted off when he looks up, they are actually standing there holding onto her skirts.
Yeah, talk about a people forged in fire, hey? Like,
Ooh,
really gives
through
you an
brutality.
and generations and generations, not one generation, not a couple of 100 years. I mean, this is thousands of years of hardship to make a people out of iron, specifically so that Rand can go and fetch them now and have his own little private army of badasses.
Of extreme badasses forged in fire, like you said,
Yeah.
like just steel hardened steel. All of that we've just covered was basically one chapter. That's all from
Yeah.
chapter 26.
All right, everybody take a break. Go get a glass of wine.
Yeah, go refill that glass. Here we go. So now we jump ahead to one of those two little kids, Maegrin and Lewin. We're jumping to the point of view of Lewin. And Lewin and some of his Aiel friends are wearing dust veils. I mean, the obvious link there to what we know, because they seem to be in some sort of desert surroundings, and they are busy casing out a campsite down the slope from where they're sitting, near some dying campfires. He wishes that he had some water, but only children are allowed water except for at meals. So here already sort of that reverence for water, may you find water and shade, that sort of stuff is already starting here. His companions sort of like scramble closer, decidedly unstealth-like.
Yeah.
Right? Like these guys are direct. I mean, this is Lewin, so Adan's grandson. These guys are attempting a reconnaissance mission with no training. The training that they've had is turn the other cheek. You know, like they are so far outside of their depth. And it's just cool, like in this sequence, like when they actually descend down the hill into the camp, they are also like one falls through a thorn bush and the other one slips and slides down the rocky side. You know, it is comically bad, which is just a very, very obvious juxtaposition to the extreme stealth prowess of the, again, I'm going to keep saying modern day Aiel.
Say it.
So he's got a couple of companions with him. There are two twins who have a sister that is down in this camp that they're spying on, and another sort of like a tall, like a big, described as like quite a big friend of theirs. And Lewin mentions that his own sister, Maegrin, is also down in this camp. So the twins have had their sister kidnapped, and Lewin has had his sister kidnapped. And what they are doing here is they are planning a rescue mission because they've had enough of this like victimization of the Aiel. They, as we've already seen, been completely exploited by anyone that seems to come across them. Lewin thinks to himself that if his grandfather Adan knew what they were planning, he would try and stop him, even for Maegrin. Like, even knowing that he's going to save his own Adan's granddaughter, he would not let them do what they are doing here. So they try and sneak into this campsite, and this is when they're being so comically loudly, but they do get in. Lewin finds Maegrin, but she is in bad shape. She's got a super busted up face, and she is basically staring blankly at him. And as he's sort of trying to get her to get up and he's talking to her, one of the abductors wakes up and he sort of comes over to Lewin and says, I'm going to skin you like a pig, boy. Like, you know, just almost enjoying the slow advance on him, knowing that these Aiel don't fight back at all. But before the guy can get to him, Lewin's friend runs in and like rugby tackles this guy and chaos ensues. Lewin crushes a man's skull with a kettle. He was sort of just like striking out at this guy, but he quite clearly dies because the guy's bones melt. You know, in that cool way that RJ likes to explain. And another man comes for Lewin, but Lewin's on the ground at the moment. He's sort of like scrambling backward, looking for anything to fend this guy off. And his hand finds a rounded stick, like a broomstick or something, like a stick that he wants to like sort of just use to fend the guy off. And as he pushes it forward, he stabs the guy with it, and it's a spear. And he has literally speared a man to death. And as he's sort of coming to grips with this and gets up, he can't understand why he's not being attacked by the other men. And his other companions had killed 2 other men. And they are still wearing, importantly, in this section, they're all still wearing their veils. It says that they're panting over their veils. So here, Robert Jordan's already establishing a link between wearing the veil and killing at the same time. And they resolve to to take the girls back to their camp, but not before realizing that the friend that had tackled that first guy with the knife has been stabbed in the belly, and he dies right there. So they carry him and the girls back to their camp. But before they go, they grab a couple things that are made of metal because they are hard to come by, but not swords. They sort of justify taking the spears because they can be used for hunting. And I thought, is this sort of a beginning of taking the fifth?
Yeah, maybe, eh?
So, like they quickly gather a couple things. Oh, these are valuable things because they're made of metal. Metal's really hard to come by. I thought was an interesting thing to put in there. Could be the start of taking the fifth. But when they return to camp, they are completely shunned for committing murder, obviously. Adan is furious and he chases them away, saying that they are Dashane no longer. Even Lewin's own mother pretends not to know him, saying, "Don't talk to me. I can't bear to see my son's face on a dead person," or something like that. They are absolutely ostracized completely. But as they leave, Lewin veils his face for the dust. But it's as he veils his face, he shouts, "I am still Aiel. I am Aiel," which I thought was a real powerful scene. Him veiling himself and then shouting, "I am Aiel."
That is the last line, is it not, of this section?
Of that vision, yeah.
Yes, all right, because that's when I put the Kindle down and I literally had goosebumps. My arm hairs were standing up and my eyes were watering.
I'm getting goosebumps now. Yeah.
I was like,
I mean, that's powerful, hey.
Yes, well done, RJ. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, intersection. The dust veils. The impression I get is not that they're in a deserty area. I think that's the entire world now. After the breaking, after so many generations, there is no water. The world is fucked. The rivers are gone.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The whole world is a desert now. And they wear the dust veils because there's constant dust storms going on. And they're always traveling on foot. They're always outside. They're not in the cities. And also just how civilization has gone to shit. Like even the description, like people are just raping and murdering and stealing and pillaging. Yeah. And the description of that guy that gets up and says, "I'm going to skin you like a pig." His clothes are like stiff. They're so dirty. And he's got this massive beard, like a barbarian, humanity has fallen so far from the Age of Legends. And it was really striking to me.
Yes. No, I think you make a valid point. It is probably everywhere because there's actually another vision, might be the next one, where it's snow everywhere.
Yeah. Like the seasons are fucked. Everything is fucked.
Yeah. Everything is fucked. Yeah, that sums it up nicely. Everything is fucked.
Yeah, Robert Jordan, no, you messed it up. 2 chapters, you could have had 1 line. Everything is fucked. End of story.
Okay, so then we jump ahead to the point of view of an 18-year-old Jordan. Jordan.
Yes. Billy?
Jordan.
No, don't pull me into this.
Please, Billy.
No, I read that and I was like, nah.
No. We're going to go with Jordan.
Too much Norse type
J-Man.
speak that.
J-Man.
Jordan is the son of a now grizzled Lewin. So Lewin, who is I am Aiel, is now an old man, and Jordan is his son. And the scene we join him in is a snowy one, with winter apparently long due to have ended, but the global climate is, as we said, busted up.
Everything's fucked.
Yeah, everything is proper fucked. The elders talk of the earth shaking and mountains raising and falling, but Jordan doesn't believe it. So maybe here the actual physical breaking of the world has slowed somewhat.
Yeah. All the male lice have died and
still fucked. Yeah.
The world's recuperating now.
Yes. For a long time.
For whatever that's worth.
Yeah. So the scene we join him in, he is busy watching 5 people sort of tromp towards him in the snow. And he refers to them as, I think, wagon folk. He lowers his veil as they approach and sort of leans on his long spear. I think lowering the veil could already be a symbol of, it certainly is in a later vision that one of the guys lowers his veil saying there will be no killing. But here he's meeting friendlies, so he takes his veil down so they can see his face. Maybe he's not even thinking it, but it is certainly the start of the habit of, veiling for a very specific circumstance. He guesses when they get to him that you have need of us, Jen. And a tall guy in the group of 5 says to him, "You mock us using that name, but we really are the true Aiel," because we know Jen Aiel means true Aiel, right? So they're using the word Jen as almost like a derisive term or derogatory term. But he says to Jordan, you have abandoned the way. But Jordan defends their way, saying that he's never touched a sword, blah, 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 blah. But if you've lost your wagons, they're over that way. So Jordan, he's watching these guys. He knows where their wagons are, and you start getting a sense of the role that these guys play for the Gen. A woman in this group of 5, Jen, quietens everyone down, says just relax, and she starts taking the lead. And she basically tells them that they've come to, quote unquote, those from the tents out of desperation. So you've got now 2 separate groups of Aiel traveling, not together, much like Perrin traveling after Faile. The wagon folk, who are these Gen, the true Aiel, still carting the Unreal around, and these guys in the tents who sort of follow closely by, who have started basically taking on the protector role. So they have abandoned the way, even if they won't admit it. They are killing people, and they are trying to protect the Gen. So this woman says that they've come out of desperation. So Jordan says, okay, I'll lead you to my father's tents. And this is Lewin's tents, and they're a mile away. Jordan thinks that there are nearly 200 people in his sept, the largest of 10 such camps scattered north of the wagons. So, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 of these tent living Aiel that have taken up arms, which is, a little sizable little contingent. But there are still many more Gen Aiel than tent Aiel. Lewin is obviously there at the tents. He is tall, grey, and like I said, grizzled. Jordan has never seen him smile. Some people say that he smiled before his wife died, but Jordan doesn't believe it. Like, he's never seen his father smile. This is Lewin that was clutching his grandfather's leg as his father was murdered and then was shunned for saving his sister from barbarian rapists. Lewin's had a hard life. The woman from the wagons tells Lewin about the fact that they had traded with the town, and that night the townspeople came back and they stole back all the stuff that they had traded and more, including captives. They had killed some of the people, and Maureen, the woman, her 5-year-old daughter was also taken. So Lewin says, okay, we'll bring them back. So this is obviously a task that they've performed before. And when Jordan was talking about they only come to the tent Aiel out of desperation, it is in these cases, where they've been victimized and they need these sort of the armed Aiel to go act on their behalf. So Lewin promises that they'll bring them back, and he offers the wagon folk a chance to join the tents and risk being ostracized by the Gen forever. He sort of plants a couple spears in the ground, and some of the Gen take up the spear, effectively declaring for the tent folk, including Maureen as a woman. And Jordan is aghast. He's like, no, this is not a thing for women. This is the first maiden of the spear.
Yep.
And Lewin doesn't even skip a beat. He offers her a chance, saying, look, you can put this down. Coming along with us taking the spear means killing. There is no shame in putting it down, which I thought was a little gentle hint at, talking of shame and honor, right? Okay, cool. This is going to be, core to your beliefs later in your, generational tree. But Maureen is determined to get her daughter back. She knows that she wants to go. Typical maiden. Lewin accepts this quite easily, and he just says, there's a first time for all things. As Lewin should know, being the first Aiel to go and kill.
I think technically the first Aiel was the guy that got killed in the camp when they tried to rescue Migrant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true.
He's the first guy. He charged, and he paid the price.
The iron price.
Yeah.
Jordan sort of instructs Maureen on how to dress in the Cadence story, saying you can't go into a fight dressed like that. You have to dress in what will become the traditional Aiel battle garb. And he takes a long spear and realizes that she's going to fall all over this thing and hacks a pace off it, leaving a 4-foot long spear, one whole foot of it being steel point. So it's 3 feet of wood and 1 foot of steel point. And sort of as he's describing to her how to use it, he starts thinking, hang on, this is actually kind of a good idea. He says to her, like, you can use the haft to sort of block things, but I'll find you something to use as a shield. Obviously sparking the idea of using the short stabbing spear. He tells her, stab with it only, like don't try and throw it or anything like that. Just it's a stabbing weapon and I'll give you a shield. And as he's talking to her, he's sort of thinking, this really has potential. While he's sort of explaining to her how to use the spear and the shield, he asks her about her husband. You know, like, is he not also concerned about your daughter? And she just says to him, look, he's already mourning her death. He is committed to the way of the leaf. He is more concerned with protecting the chora tree cuttings than, you know, finding his daughter again. And she looks at the spear and she says, I'm wedded to this now.
Yes.
Yeah. God knows mine. Morin says to Jordan that she saw his face in the dream. But Jordan doesn't actually even hear that, because as he's sort of looking at the spear and the shield, he thinks to himself, men with swords will not stop them. He's already noticing swords are the inferior weapon. This is what's going to turn the tide of war.
So the actual, like the iconic Aiel spear is created out of the need for maidens, like the first
Well, maidens. The first Aiel spear was wielded by a maiden.
Yes.
It's very cool. I mean,
yeah.
Anyone that's come this far on our podcast is obviously a Wheel of Time nerd and would agree with us. I mean, just how cool is that? Trying to explain how cool this is to someone that has not read the Wheel of Time would be,
of course not,
impossible. But that's just another testament to like how many small little details that we've been fed over time that have been sort of drip fed to us to make this moment so poignant. That, like, you know, like you read these seemingly insignificant moments and they do give you goosebumps and you're like, fuck yes, that is awesome. I love that. So let's forge on.
Indeed.
Now we jump ahead again to the point of view of a 20-year-old man called Roderick, who is Jordan's grandson. He's carrying already a number of short spears and a bullhide buckler, and his veil is up. He can see his grandfather with his white hair. So Jordan has aged quite a bit. That the elders would refer to white as snow. So here again, there has no been any snow again. So like there was dry desert, then there was snow. Here's a 20-year-old man that's never seen snow. You know, like he doesn't believe that snow actually even exists. They seem to be guarding a number of Aiel who are busy digging wells and hauling up water skins. And while they're doing that, 3 riders approach them, not seeing, like, these riders are oblivious to the Aiel hiding in the rocks and stuff. So already the Aiel showing, okay, they've upped their game in terms of stealth. But Roderick recognizes the rider and he lowers his veil. And this is where he says there will be no killing unless they attacked first. So he's drawing the link between veiling and killing. So he takes off his veil saying there will be no killing here. The lead horseman is a guy called Garon who knows Roderick. And they actually have quite a bit of a conversation here. The townspeople here allowed the Aiel to dig wells, which this Garon's dad sort of leads the town, because they get use out of the wells after the Aiel have left. So they have struck some sort of bargain. Beginnings of trade between Aiel and non-Aiel. Garon says...
Water treaty.
Yes. Yeah. A water oath. Garon says to Jordan... Or he says that Jordan wanted to know when the gen started to move, and they have. And he asks if they truly are the same people, the Aiel and the gen. So he's standing here talking to Roderick. He hasn't seen Jordan, but he says to Roderick, your grandfather wanted to know when the gen start moving, and I'm just here to come tell you that they have started moving. And are you guys really the same people? Because you are very different. Roderick himself can't explain it. He sort of says we are, but we aren't. And he says here that he doesn't quite understand it himself, but, you know, things are what they are. So he just goes along with it. And Jordan just pipes up and he says, in which direction have they moved? And no one except Roderick has seen him approach. Like he heard a soft boot that he knew was Jordan's, but the rider's like, whoa, shit. Garam says that they've moved east across the spine of the world. So the The location here is obviously quite near the spine of the world, and the Gen have now set out to cross it. And these tent Aiel, Jordan and his people will follow after them. Garum asks Jordan if they are not nervous traveling with an Aes Sedai, because apparently 4 Aes Sedai had joined those wagons a year ago. And Jordan says, "We guard the Gen. They travel with Aes Sedai. It's not us." Garum says his dad has an Aes Sedai advisor, and he's sort of like nervous about it. And she says that they will build a great city by the river, which will eventually become Kyrian.
Mm-hmm.
These are the descendants, or not the descendants, but the I don't know, one of the forefathers of Kyrian.
That's it.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
She also says that the Aes Sedai have found Ogier to build them a city. So this is, at this point, Tavalon has not even started construction. But Garum thinks that they should kill all the Aes Sedai before they destroy everything again. Which, is indicative of already a lack of understanding of non-channelers, that it's men who pose a threat and not women. So he's lumping the female Aes Sedai that they have encountered with the breaking of the world, which was only men. And as we know, by the time we enter the story, people are so skeptical of Aes Sedai for reasons much like this, just because of how the stories have diluted over time.
All the knowledge that's been lost, all those objects of power that were lost along those wagons, along those thousands of years. Like now, I was thinking about this when I was reading it as well. Like you could go digging in any spot and you'd probably find a whole cache of Angreal just lying around.
Yeah, it's why like the stone in the vaults has like so many, and the tower has so many, and there's a bunch in Tanchico in the museum and stuff, and the Forsaken have some squirreled away, and
they're everywhere.
Yeah. So Jordan sort of muses about crossing the spine of the world, which he knows also has another name, the Dragon Wall, which he thinks to himself is a very suitable name because the Aiel's secret name is the People of the Dragon. And I was wondering if this line from the vision is the line that some of the other clan chiefs hear as well, which is how they know that they are called the People of the Dragon. Like Ruach did in the stone. Because there's nothing in Rand's series of events that specifically says, "And now you, the People of the Dragon, shall move forth from..." It's just mentioned here in Giordam's thoughts. Was it in Roderick's thoughts? One of the two. He doesn't know what will be on the other side of the Dragon Wall, but certainly a fight. There were only the Aiel, the Gen, and enemies. That's what he thinks.
I mean, experience has taught him nothing else over 1,000 years,
Totally.
Yeah.
It might be completely pointless, but was the spine raised during the breaking, or was it
think so.
a feature of the landscape?
I think so. They seem to be traveling like crisscrossing, because at one point one of the groups is traveling from the east, when they meet the Ogier who came from the north. They said, "Oh, the east is bad, don't go that way." So they might be going like across everywhere.
They're looking for a way to get away.
Yeah.
Now, it's just because, how the landscape changed or so dramatically different on a land that would have been the same. Just raising the spine could have cut off the patterns and turning it into a dust bowl. Because when they got there, initially it wasn't quite that way. Building Rhuidean would have probably been where the waters were spout, fountains was working in there and stuff.
They have technology for that they mentioned in the last vision, that there are large tanks of water underneath the ground that the Gen somehow had the technology to bring up into these things. One of the guys in the last vision thinks to himself, wars have been fought over less water than what was on display here.
Yeah, just a little bit about geography. When I was reading this as well, in this part, Roderick is talking about the mountains he sees to the north that are white-tipped, but they are nothing like the mountains to the east, which seem to be stretching to the sky. And if you look on the map, Kyrian has the Kinslayer's dagger coming out to the north, and then on the east there is the spine of the world, and then Tangai Pass is the way across through, and on the map it even says to Rhuidean. So it's exactly that spot right there on the map is where they are in this part of the story, where they're mountains to the north and mountains to the east, and now they're going to cross over.
And there go the Gen.
Yeah.
Finally, here's a spot where no one's going to bother us. Let's build a massive city in the middle of the desert.
Yep. I wonder, do you know, is there a map of the waste of how far Rhuidean is into the
I
waste?
don't know.
I don't know either.
I've never seen one. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I've never seen one.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up.
Rand didn't help us by using a portal stone to get there either. Thanks a lot, Rand.
No.
Dick.
Okay, so we jump ahead one last time. So this would be the first vision that Rand.
We jump ahead for the first time. Oh, backwards. Yes. Where's Marty McFly when you need him? Dark.
Apple cart confusion, schmaffle cart confusion. Now we jump to the point of view of a guy called Mandian, grandson of Comran, grandson of Roderick. So this is like many generations on. Comran, so Mandian's grandfather, was the first to have found the steading in the Dragon Wall and started trading with them. So the Ogier only started trading with the Aiel a couple of generations ago. And Roderick, who we read about in the previous chapter, or in the previous vision, had led the Aiel who killed wetlanders who crossed the Dragon Wall, setting the standard for generations to come. So like the Aiel, once they crossed the Dragon Wall, didn't let anyone else into it. If you come across, Roderick and his buddies ended your life.
Yeah.
Cheers. Stay out. No trespassers. Mandian is sort of near Rhuidean, standing on a slope looking down at the city with his wife, Cialdre, who's also a dreamer, who says he must agree to whatever the Gen ask. Her dream sisters had dreamed the same dream, and they refer to them here as wise ones. So many dreamers, right? Like these Aiel, it seems like many of the women are dreamers, or dream walkers at least. Rhuidean is still under construction, but the glass columns are there, and they are next to the Chora tree, the Avendasora, which is at this point only 3 spans high, which is 18 to 20 feet. And when Rand and Matt enter Rhuidean, the tree is 100 feet tall. I went back and I checked.
Okay.
So it's still young.
No need for pins. Gotcha.
But it has grown a fair bit, so like they've been building here for a while. Mandian just thinks to himself that Rhuidean can't be defended. Not that anyone would attack the Gen now. I mean, they've certainly been attacked, much like people mostly avoid the lost ones searching for their songs. So Mandian here is commenting on the fact that at least where they are, nobody will attack the Gen and nobody will attack the Tuatha Ann, because the only other people around are other Aiel, right? Like no one else is allowed in there. So to him, no one would attack them if only he knew. But there's a procession sort of approaching from Rhuidean, and Mandian and about 100 of his men, they ghost down the slopes of this mountain to go meet with him. But he orders the men to stop short. He unveils himself and he proceeds toward this contingent from Rhuidean by himself. He's vaguely aware of others approaching from other directions as well, so other groups of people that have all sort of converged here. Also, thankfully, unveiled. He mentions that to kill in front of a Gen is almost as bad as killing a Gen Aiel yourself. So, with this contingent from Rhuidean are 2 ancient-looking Aes Sedai. He says their skin looked like it could be blown away by the wind, and their hair is white, but their actual facial structure and stuff still looks young. So they are probably hundreds of years old. I mean, could these be 2 of the 4 Aes Sedai that joined the wagons in Roderick's vision? Like they are super old.
I'm guessing they're 1,000+ years old, based on the timeline. Look, how old is everyone's favorite Aes Sedai? The name eludes me now. That Cadsuane. Cadsuane is like
she's
400, 500, something like that.
Okay, none of us know, so let's all guess. I'm gonna say she is 600 years old.
Like she is, and I mean, she looks absolutely fine. I'm telling you, these Aes Sedai are 1,000+ years old.
Could be,
because I mean, they still came from pre-Kyrian times. Like the city wasn't even built yet.
Yes, they are older than Kyrian.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, they maybe even thousands. That's why they look like they're going to get blown away by the wind any second.
Look like mummies.
Mum rock.
There's also a man that sort of steps forward, and he's named Derman. Derman asks why they don't carry swords, and Mandian sort of explains it's forbidden. But this was a loaded question. So the Aes Sedai just say, you don't truly know why you don't carry swords. Who is to lead the Aiel needs to come to Rhuidean to learn. Those who cannot learn will not live. And this echoes Cialdre's dream that she told Mandine about. Like she said, those who don't come here and listen and accept what the gens say here, their septs and their clans will turn to dust within 3 generations. They will die. So that's why you must accept whatever they say. One of the other Aiel, a man who Mandine had like gifted a scar to across his face, he just straight up asks, so what, whichever of us comes to you will lead the Aiel? And the Aes Sedai says, no, that one will come later. The stone that never falls will fall to announce his coming. Of the blood, but not raised by the blood. He will come from Rhuidean at dawn and tie you together with bonds you cannot break. He will take you back and he will destroy you. The Aes Sedai say that the gens' days are numbered and that the Aiel must remain to remember or all is lost. So it's almost like the use for the gen was only to get the actual cargo to Rhuidean, build the city to house it, and then sort of spawn along the way the battle-hardened Aiel that will serve he who comes with the dawn as an actual warrior society, contrary to everything they stand for.
Yep.
Which is... I mean, Robert Jordan, cool story, bro. Like
well
that
done,
in
man.
itself is epic. Yes, it's so good. This is what I was talking about. Like, didn't necessarily stick for me the first couple times I read it. Like, just reading the story like this is just, it's unbelievably cool, and it's all crammed into 2 chapters of book 4 of 14. You know, like, it's unbelievable the lore that has gone into this tale. So Mandine asks them a final question. He says, if you know your end, why build this place? Sort of pointing at Rhuidean. And Dermot says to him, without blinking, it's our purpose. We do what we must, and we keep the faith. And Mandine sort of respects their lack of fear, and he says, you are Aiel. I will go to the Gen Aiel. And the other Aiel around him are sort of like shocked. Like when he says, you are Aiel, they're like, what? No, they're not. Like, look how different they are. But Mandine, kudos to you, buddy. He says, you are Aiel. I will go to the Gen Aiel. And when Dermot says he can't come to Rhuidean armed, Mandine laughs and he starts shedding his weapon, saying, take me to Rhuidean, Aiel. I will match your courage.
You guys, he recognizes the courage in these guys, like what they've done.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to die. They've served their purpose. And he's like, well, you guys got some balls.
I'm tearing up. Like just thinking of the magnitude of that statement.
Yeah,
that's really, really fucking cool. And that is the end of all the visions. So the purpose of the visions is to show you, obviously, how the Aiel went from, being the servants of the Aes Sedai from the time of when the boar was created, to show their entire history, what their actual purpose was, why the Aiel were tasked with these things from the Aes Sedai themselves, the foretelling that all of this was based on, with all the little hints of like the Eye of the World being created and what would happen with Kalandor and the founding of Cairhien, and the battle hardening of the Aiel, the 10th Aiel, who become, the Aiel that we know, which is just epic.
I'm still hanging on the age of those Aes Sedai. Did they really, like, after? Because look, they could be 3,000 years old from the breaking till now. They could be
survived,
over. Yeah, are those the same Aiel from the Age of Legends? Did they raise new Aes Sedai after that and before the Tower? Surely they must have found women who could channel and try to train them. Because they could be some of those, or they just could be like literally still alive from the Age of Legends.
Yeah. Don't know.
Yeah, man.
Put a pin in it.
How long has it been since this last vision until Rand arrives?
Oh,
the Aes Sedai are still alive. They're still building Rhuidean, and then that's the last we hear.
Yes. There apparently, and I haven't seen evidence of this yet. I don't know if it comes out later, but Rand is a direct descendant of Mandine. Janduin, who's Rand's biological dad, is a descendant of Mandine, and I've seen that referenced online in places. I don't know what that's based on, but maybe the wise ones have a conversation with Rand in the not too distant future. I don't know. Have you guys read Rand's interaction?
No.
Have you covered the because there's a chapter coming up called "He Who Comes with the Dawn"?
Yeah. No, you don't get
So maybe-
these kind of answers within the before chapter 37 or 39
No.
if Willie is not aware of the answers either. So.
I was also wondering, at what point do the other clan chiefs, do their visions deviate from this? Are all the clan chiefs descendants of Mandine? Probably not. So like,
No.
could they be descendants of some of the others?
I
At
wonder
some
if they
point
all
they would
see
join.
the same vision. They all just go through. Like Rand just happens to be a direct descendant of these people. Okay, but do all
Maybe.
the clan chiefs see the exact same vision through the exact same eyes? Because it would be. I think it could just
We'll
leave
have
too
to
much
go
up
consult
to
the
fate.
texts.
Yeah.
To the scripture.
Where's Brother Maynard?
Bring on the Book of Armaments.
I would say that being a clan chief would sort of must be generational in a sept, and a sept would have been a family unit that has been formed over thousands of years. There wouldn't be so the blood of a sept would have at some of whether the 6 or 8 or 9 different storylines that's going to be unique to their understanding of how they got to be and what they broke away from,
Maybe.
what they were. So just to
All of
bring
them
it
would need to know.
emotionally home to all of them.
All of them would need to know that they're the people of the dragon.
Yeah.
That's one thing that would
It's
have to
just
appear in all their visions.
tailored through all of this, just where were you and when this happened? Like some of it might be just these septs that always hung around on the fringes and they're like all their messages or knowledge that get passed across is based on they heard it while they were farming.
Yeah.
Or they heard this while they were sitting in the tent.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably what happened to the Shido. That's why they're so shit. Their lineage just goes. There's broken
Why
telephones.
always depicted as the douchebags? Because you are.
Because you are.
Yes. Now, like I mentioned before, what's happening the whole time in between these things is obviously Rand sees all these visions in reverse order from what we just covered them.
Yeah.
And every time he comes out, he sees Muradin and he's sort of gaining on him. And at one point, Muradin is he looks confused and sort of annoyed. And then later he looks like really put out and he's sweating. And then later his eyes are bulging and he's got like a rictus snarl on his face. Then later he has dug furrows in his own face. So he's clawing at his own face. And at one point, Rand says it seems to be like he's digging at his eyes now. And then later he doesn't have eyes and there's like a bloody foam coming out of his mouth, which made me think he's eating his own eyes.
That's what I thought too. That seems.
Did he tear his eyes out and eat them?
Because he's chewing
Yikes,
underneath his
dude.
veil. He's veiled.
Yeah.
And he's got bloody froth dripping from his chin
Yes.
underneath, and he's chewing. What is he chewing? Where are his eyes? I don't want to face it.
Where are his eyes? Man,
Yeah.
not having a good time. And then when Rand comes out, he's nowhere to be found.
He's
Never
just
to be
gone.
seen again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's well, the Shido must really have a shit story. Really realize something about their sept and their bloodline.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. So, I mean, I hope that cleared something up for someone. If we helped one person today, it would be worth it.
No, indeed. No, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I enjoyed this journey, reading it and recapping it with you.
I mean, I was not kidding when I said I was tearing up there. Like, I mean, there are so many moments like that one you also mentioned, Joe, like when he pulls the veil over his face and he shouts, I am Aiel, there are so many poignant moments and just the utter despair and futility of their existence is just like beaten into you over such a short period of time. It is such an effective piece of writing.
Yeah.
I am blown away by how I've been affected by it.
No, for sure. This is definitely something that needed a little, like this kind of in-depth analysis. There's what Willie and I are going to talk about now will be done in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's so localized. The whole humans field part is like, it's just relevant to itself then and there.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of a nice reprieve after like, this is heavy going. I read these 2 chapters back to back and it was just like, I had to take a break afterwards. Like you said, Joe, like you have to put the book down and just walk away for a minute just to process what you've read.
Yeah.
So let's come back to the quote unquote present and let's deal with some other fun stuff. There's stuff that happens here. There's a bubble of evil and a big fight that I'm just going to gloss over because it
Yeah.
pales in comparison to everything we've just gone through. But anyway, Rand comes out of the columns and he's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm out. And he's seeing these flashing lights and he's sort of, like adjusting to it. No sign of Muradin anywhere. But when he looks over to Avendasora, he sees something hanging from it and he realizes it's Mat and he runs up there. And the way that I understood this is it's the Ashandarai sort of like hanging between two branches and Mat actually hanging from it.
Yes.
Yeah?
It's across two, like a fork in the branches,
Yes.
and then a rope tied to the Ashandare, as I pronounce it.
So Rand sees Mat hanging, from a noose from his spear. I will not say that word again on this podcast. He's hanging from his spear, and he rushes over and he leaps up and he cuts him down with his flame rod. I mean, he can make things happen with the power, but he conjures a sword and then uses the sword to cut the rope, still stuck in his ways there. And he has a bit of an epiphany in that regard against these dust creatures he fights later, but he still just cut Mat down here. And Mat's not breathing. He's got no heartbeat and he's not breathing. So he's dead. Qualifies for graduation from the school of Aelfin death.
Yes.
This is that time. So Rand gives him CPR. Straight up, starts beating on his chest, blowing into his lungs. And he'd seen Master Lewin actually do this to a boy that was found floating in the river. I wonder where he learned that. That's a pretty useful skill to have and pretty high tech. But Mat comes to. Rand saves his life. Mat comes to, and his first words are, "Those flaming sons of goats, they tried to kill me."
And Rand's looking around like, who tried to kill you?
It's just amazing. He explains to Rand what he sort of like, kind of explains to him what happened on the other side of the doorway. He found a doorway. It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't quite the same thing. And he sort of, Mat looks down and he sees the foxhead medallion and he sort of stares at it for a second. Then it seems like he was almost ready to throw it away, but he puts it in his pocket anyway. And he pulls the spear close to him and he's sort of like laughing about the cruel joke. And, he quotes the text written on it that I didn't write down here for some reason. But Rand does comment on the fact that he's looking at the spear and he can see some of the text, but he can't understand it at all. He doesn't know how Mat would understand it. And Mat's just read it and said exactly what it is. And he says, it's their joke, but I'll keep it. This is fine. Mat says that his head really, really hurts. And he wonders if Moraine could even do something about it. And Rand's thinking, what? Who's this? Who are you? Like Mat would never think about that. And I wonder if this is like maybe some of, pure Mat being somewhat diluted by some of his memories, or because, Mat wants nothing to do with the power.
Yeah.
Why would he be so willing to just say, oh, I wonder if Mat or if Moraine can heal my headache?
Maybe it's a really bad headache.
Two possible things. One is that it's just a really bad headache, that he's willing for that to happen, or two, that, as you said, the dilution of his memories, so his own life is being diluted into the memories of other lives. So
that was
with
where
that
my
comes
mind
knowledge
went.
and wisdoms. Yeah. So definitely the knowledge and wisdom part that comes with it. Could say like, hey, why suffer?
Yeah. I just imagine that he would have had hangovers bad enough to sort of have that thought as well. And it hasn't been pointed out by RJ like this has, but who knows? They head back, pausing briefly by the access keys, and Rand looks at them and he thinks, not yet. If all goes well, not for a while yet. So Rand has some idea that he's going to do something with these things.
He knows what they are.
Yes, he does. I mean, he recoiled from them in horror when he realized it on the way in. As they're walking, Rand sort of feels like something might be watching him. So he embraces Saidin. He doesn't channel or anything, but he's just embracing the source now, which is pretty cool. And that's when a bubble of evil rocks up. He sees dust blowing, but there's no wind in here. What is going on? And then the dust sort of forms into these dust creatures with claws that come at them and start attacking them. And they start fighting their way through these dust creatures. And Rand, using his flame sword, notices that Mat is using this spear as a quarterstaff, but it's got this it's like a foot or a foot and a half of like a short sword blade at the end. It's not a pure spear. It's actually even slightly curved blade, like much like Rand and Land's swords, right? Like a katana blade almost, if not as long. And Matt is incorporating the use of that blade in his fighting style as if he's perfectly comfortable with it, as if he's been using it his whole life, which is awesome because this obviously is some of Matt's new memories and instincts coming into play with this weapon that has long since been lost. No one has used anything like this, that Rand or anyone else, because you never encounter another weapon like it.
No.
Do you?
I think the
Maybe
Sean
someone
Chan know
comments
what
on his weapon.
I think it's when he meets what's her face?
Chuan.
Tuan, Daughter of the Nine Moons. Yes.
Mm.
Like they know what that weapon is.
Mm. So anyway, they're sort of fighting through these things, and they're trying to make their way towards the edge of Rhuidean, towards the fog. But they're slowly but surely getting overwhelmed, and eventually Rand just does a big old channel attack, and he smashes all of these things to smithereens. But as they do, they start forming up again. He actually thinks to how Lanfear said to him, "You use a tenth of what you can do, fucking around with this flame sword. Stop it. Just use the power like a badass." So he does, and as these things start forming up again, they're like, "Oh shit, we still got to go." So they just bolt and they run. They make it out. They run into the fog and they run straight through it. And as they turn around on the other side, they turn back towards the city to sort of guard against anything, but nothing seems to follow them out. And when they turn around, they notice that they've been there all night. That the sun is starting to rise. And Rand, having been in the visions, he's like, "Okay, I know what this means." And he says to Matt, "Let's go back up the mountain. They will be waiting for us." And he thinks to himself, "They'll be waiting for me."
Mm-hmm.
End of chapter.
I like how Matt's in that chapter as well. Like when Rand channels finally and disperses all of them, he's like, "You could have done that the whole time. Why don't you start with that move?"
Gives him shit. Matt has just died, right? Like he's just been dead and come back, and he is straight back into cocky Matt mode. Like he knows no other way.
And they've taken some hits, man. They're all bleeding. Like the two of them are bleeding.
Yes.
Those creatures drew blood. So, like, shit, Rand, next time just start with the one power. It would be very helpful.
Yo, guys, now I am tired of talking, and I'm sure the listeners are tired of listening to my droning voice carry on the whole time. So, was there anything else you wanted to add to chapters 25 and 26?
No, God, Willie, please, just start your chapter.
I was going to say, it's the same amount of time that we spent on it than it would have taken to read them. Back to back.
Yes, 100%, if not longer. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone. Yo, we're really peppering in the Monty Python references in this episode as well.
I don't know. It's just natural.
It is. Okay, so let's then move ahead. Let's do a little Emond's Field Perrin Ibarra palette cleanser in chapter 27. Within the ways, the peaceful, unexciting ways. Take it away, Willem.
Yes, so we've got Perrin and Gaul riding behind Loial and his party, or as Perrin deliberately states it, that he doesn't want to make it Faile's party, but they are 2 days into the ways now, and the air is still, everything's still, it's just 2 days of traveling in the ways with nothing eventful, much like the first stint through the ways, usually up to the end.
Yeah.
Now, Perrin gets a little bit of a throwback to what happened when they entered the ways, and how he had the star slapped out of him by Faile. He ran in first, and then him and Gaul moved quite fast to the guiding, and you don't see the light there, and of course that would have caused as he quite deliberately did, a bit of panic, but he got himself slapped again and punched in the short rib, and then picked Faile up by the scruff of the neck, and he trails off his memory there. But he's obviously upset quite a bit in that exchange. Well, Gaul then finally notices their lights stop moving in front of them. And as we now know about the ways, if light goes too far from you, you actually don't get to see it. It's enveloped in blackness. And he hears that he's being summoned, or Faile calling out for him. And he rides up to her as he always would, I suppose. She is still his girl. And then there's like, what can I do for you? She's like, nah, nothing. I just wanted to see if you can still go, would still come if I call. And it's like,
Yes.
just whip. It's terrible. Yeah, so Gaul looks at him and says, mate, you might as well want to understand the sun. Like, science is lost to us. We don't understand the sun anymore, but you might as well try and understand the sun. And the maidens always just having a little cackle, Bain and Chiad at each other, just always looking and shaking heads.
Love them.
Loial then just sort of announced it, like, hey man, just the reason you were summoned over here, and he points to the guiding, is the Manetheren way gate is this way. So basically 2 days in, and they've made it all the way from the stone back to the Two Rivers area. Perrin at this stage in this movement has already picked up first a little foul whiff in the air, but with the calling confusion didn't think into much about it. And then a very strong foul smell came through the air. And he then heard hooves on the stones. And it's like, all right, Trollocs. And as he yells Trollocs, Gaul spins around in that movement, already veiled himself, and out into the light comes Wolf Snout Trolloc. Wolf Snout falls straight into a spear that basically is pierced and pulled out, and Gaul just steps aside for the massive Trolloc body to fall down.
Beautiful.
And is already going for the next one.
Yeah.
Everyone, of course, at this moment is up in arms, and there's just knives fights, and Perrin had, instead of grabbing his axe, for the first time grabbed the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't quite sure how he actually loosened it off his saddlebags, but it wasn't like the axe was in his belt loop. He made an effort. He goes to town with the hammer and cracks some skulls. And that's when a Faile leaps into the light on his horse. And it's now all hell breaks loose. But before the Faile even announces himself, he has been peppered with arrows
Yeah.
by the two maidens. Bain and Chiad is just laying the arrows into him like a pincushion, all into the chest. And Faile's not far behind him, with a knife going straight into his maggoty white face.
Mm-hmm.
And this Faile does not want to die, so he is thrashing and stabbing, and it takes all the might of them to eventually overthrow him. A lot of the Trollocs don't die and don't stop fighting at this stage, now that one of the Faile's been killed. And he's like, okay, well then there must be more, so we have to get out of here. Instruction, like, everyone ride this, we got to get out. He asks Loial then, can you please close this way gate, as in for good, that they can't get out of here? And he says, yeah, I'll do what I can, just get out. The leaf gets put into place, and the shimmer appears, and Perrin just he gallops straight out. And with a time shift, they all pretty much fall or blixen off their horses, some almost breaking their necks. But by the time that Perrin got through, Bain and Chiad and Gaul have already found high points of vantage. Arrows are ready to go. It's okay, whatever follows out. And that being said, Beaky Face Trolloc steps out, and the black wind appears. And Mustn't Shin just grabs at all of it and pulls them back in. And Jody, I wrote this down.
No, he's going to read it to me.
Why would you? Why would you?
I'm going to just mute.
Bitter blood. Blood so bitter. Drink the blood, crack the bone and suck the marrow. Bitter marrow, sweet screams. Singing screams, sing the screams. Tiny souls, acrid souls. Gobble them down. So sweet the pain.
Interesting that Mustn't Shin is using like descriptive language specifically for Trollocs. You know, like bitter blood, bitter marrow, acrid souls, tiny souls. Like, it's talking about consuming Trollocs.
Exactly. I think the accurate souls probably the fades, tiny souls,
Hey, all
Trollocs.
probably quite accurate.
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, Martian Shin is he claimed his bounty.
Mm-hmm.
Loial seals the waygate, and he then tells Perrin that, look, don't ask me to destroy a waygate. These things were sung, they were made, but I took the key from the inside, so it can only be opened from the outside. But don't ask me to destroy it, which is just exactly what they wanted. They're not the ways to be used for people or for Trollocs or Madral to come into the area for spoiling the fun of poor old farmers.
But that would mean that now, if Moraine or anyone else wanted to use the ways to come to the Manetherin gate, they'd rock up there. There'd be no leaf. They can't get out.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens later in the story? Doesn't Loial go and get they closed up and reopened the way gates, or
Loial and I think
remember
one or two of the Ashaman are tasked with traveling around to all the waygates and sealing all of them up from the outside.
Yeah, this comes back to bite them later on because I think Slayer goes back and opens the gate and from the outside and lets the Trollocs back into the two rivers during the Battle of the Two Rivers.
Jerkwad.
Yeah, He's not cool. I don't like him.
Mm-mm. As we'll soon find out.
Now, Perrin then surveys the land and he kind of gets an idea where he is. Like, this is where the city of Manetherin, what was it called? What's the city called?
Manetherin,
yeah, stood, and so many years ago. But he can survey the land and he's got an idea where he is. And as he's looking and surveying the land, he sees two hawks flying and an arrow take one of the hawks out of the sky. And as this hawk is tumbling, the hawk's partner sort of tumbles down. Like, some of them do have courtship rituals of tumbling together in the bird world.
If anyone's going to know, it's Willie.
Yep.
But then it's quickly get chased up again as a massive murder of crows fly up, and parents just like, nah, just I won't tell them about this right now. What they've just experienced is bad enough, because shortly after they closed that off, everyone's like, what the hell was that? Or more Faile. It's like Loial in his car, Martian Shin. That's he's gonna do what he's gonna do. And that's Faile then for the first time actually comes up to Perrin and he's expecting another walloping, but she starts to mend his wounds. Got him stripped down to just his small clothes, which I think is part of a plan, just to cop an eye. And then she actually had to sew him up together. But interestingly, it looked on her face that her sewing him up caused her more pain than she inflicted on him in the healing or the helping of tending to the wounds. They sort of tended to everyone's wounds and said, cool, we'll set up camp. No one's going to come out this way gate. And tomorrow we'll set up on the long trek to Emond's Field.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I got a couple of things.
Go, Joe.
Probably the same things as you, Moritz.
Quite likely.
Yes. Domestic abuse is definitely
I
up.
called it spousal abuse. So
right.
Exactly the same things.
They weren't at home, so it's not domestic. Yes, that's a step too far, Faile. You don't just go slapping people around like that. And then he trails off, but later on she refuses to sit gingerly on her seat. So he asked her to stop after several slaps and then spanked her, which left her with a sore bottom. This whole thing is just super weird because they did it in front of everyone. Loial is freaking out of embarrassment, and because he just watched Perrin spank Faile and
spank a grown woman.
Yeah, like weird
against her will.
And the Bain and Chiad would not help her, and she's upset with them because they were like,
I love their reasoning, though.
You picked the fight, you got to deal with the consequences. You know, shit happens. Yeah. Another cool little thing I found as well was that when Faile was on her horse, like throwing knives at the fade, she had in this moment as well folded her gloves, taken them off and folded them and put them behind her belt. Like, when did you
Like the
find time for
Saldaean
doing
lady
that?
that she is.
Like the Saldaean lady that she is. And there was one more thing. Oh yes, they when how the Fae died was that Perrin smashed his head from from a 12 till 6 position with the hammer.
Yeah.
And smashed the Fae's head in, and he was still moving
Crushed it.
around and kicking and screaming.
Thrashing,
Yeah.
and poking with his knives.
Yeah, what happened to the knife? That was Faile's knife was in his
That's-
face. That probably got crushed
It's
too.
now in the Fade's neck.
Who knows where it is?
Adrian also wrote in saying how disappointed she is in Robert Jordan for reverting to spousal abuse. I know
Yeah.
Perrin is sort of set up to be the beefiest of boys, and we're expected to interpret her physical assault on him as futile because he's big and strong, and she couldn't possibly do enough damage to him to actually harm him. But that's not the real harm that domestic violence inflicts. It's the idea that your loved one would raise their hand to you and try and cause you any physical pain whatsoever. So it goes for the spanking as well.
Mm.
It's it's weird that it is such a light rendition of such a heavy topic.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is that wokeness gone too far? Is that is
No.
this a comment that I would have made 10 years ago? Probably not. But as a married man now, the idea of raising my hand to my wife to spank her or anything is
No, man.
completely it's anathema.
It did not sit well with me, this point. It started as soon as she started slapping him. She slapped him across the face,
Yeah.
and then she slapped
She
him
slapped
again.
him before.
And I'm like, whoa. Now, like, I understand, like, maybe from the writing perspective, this is the Saldaean culture. But still, there are cultures. I know. I don't have to agree with this culture. I think there's lots of fucked up cultures in the world, and this is one of them. This is not something that sat well with me. Like I said, I did not. This is probably the first time I've noticed it. I didn't notice it on previous rereads, probably because of age, like you said.
I mean, I remember it.
Yeah, it's not something that stuck out to me.
I remember them being physical with each other in that way. Now, the only other thing that I could potentially let Robert Jordan get away with is that if they have previously had a conversation in which they both agreed that they are both into a little bit of pain.
Are we kink shaming again?
Exactly. I don't want to kink shame Perrin and Faile, if that's sort of their thing, if that's how they work themselves up into a more romantic situation, fair game. But this did not come across that way. Like it seems like just acting out of anger and hitting each other, which is fucked up.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I get exactly where you are coming from, both of you.
I sense a but.
But I need to remind you that we are also dealing with a story where people stab each other in the face, cut people in half to our celebration.
But they're bad people.
It's okay if they're bad.
All people are bad
They've
people.
tried to cut them in half.
This is two good people slapping. It's kind of like...
But I think,
yes.
I think the difference, Vil, is that this is happening between characters that ostensibly love each other.
Yes, I get that.
That's the part that's incongruous.
I get all of that. I think that people would also... You have to be able to draw that distinction between what is something that's just written. And you can't limit people's ability to dream up and create epic stories, because epic stories carry heavy emotion, and heavy emotion comes through heavy things that happen. So if you're going to write stories about everyone sitting underneath the Avendesorella tree, eating its fruits, and all living the hippie dream in peace, then it's not going to be exciting stories that give you goosebumps when things go wrong, and give you tears when things go. So, yes, I just wouldn't draw too much attention to it, because for me, this distinction is that this is firstly fantasy. And there are many things that I would object to. And again, why they're still not torturing people for answers when
Hey.
it's a fair war.
Perrin does. Perrin chops the hand off an Aiel
Mm,
and has them heal it. Has Aes Sedai heal it again. Like, there are torture scenes in this, which I should say I also didn't like. But I guess you understand it from the character's point of view. You understand the motivation that brought them to that point. And in this case, Faile hitting Perrin is that she is so angry with him for endangering himself in that way. And she is so upset by the idea of actually losing him, and that he played a part in potentially losing himself, denying her and him their connection. That she was so cross with him for jeopardizing that she just lashed out. So yes, I understand how the characters got there. It was just like, in my 40-year-old mind reading that, it stood out to me as like,
Me too.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
But
look,
I get it.
no,
like
I
the
don't like the
torches-
torture
yeah,
either.
absolutely.
like the torture scene is a sign of his desperation to find Faile later.
Mm.
All right, and there's no connection between him and the Aiel. Like, I think that if Robert Jordan had not included this in the story, it would have made zero difference. Like, I don't think it makes the story better or increases my understanding of their relationship or anything. I don't think it serves a purpose. It just seems gratuitous, which is why it stood out to me.
Mm.
Whereas torture scenes later on do serve a purpose in character growth and how much he regrets it later on and how much it shocks you and things like that. But this is just
He
seems
agonizes over
unnecessary.
it.
Yeah, this doesn't seem necessary. I don't think they ever talk about it again. It doesn't come up.
Does that mean that the series is evil and you shouldn't read these books? Fuck no.
Yeah,
Just
look, way worse books have been written than this shit that
Yes.
we're reading now. That's like from Willie's argument. I totally get that. It's just this specific scene just seemed unnecessarily weird and violent. Ugh.
Perrin mentions being able to smell the pained smell of injury.
Mm.
You can smell if someone is injured, not from the blood leaking from their body or anything, but from the way that they are experiencing pain. So his sense of smell is like really getting nuanced now.
You can smell pain
Why
spread
didn't you smell those Trollocs like a little bit further away than when they were right on top of them?
because he was all
Maybe
befuddled.
there wasn't any wind to
because of
carry.
Faile and all of the shit that was going down. He wasn't
He was
concentrating.
distracted.
Yeah, he was getting slapped.
He's also getting in the back of his mind, he's also walking to his own death. He's got a lot on his mind at the moment because he makes a comment here saying, where he chastises himself, saying, "Fool, you only have to hold out a few more days," knowing that he's walking to a white cloak noose.
Fool indeed.
So he's already resigned himself to death. So he's got a lot going on, old beefy boy.
And the Aiel should have heard that shit as well. Look, there's 3 of them.
But also sound travels weird in there. Who's to say smell maybe as well? If light and sound are both problematic, maybe smell is as well. The ways are weird.
Yeah.
The ways are weird. Next t-shirt.
Everything is fucked. The ways are weird. Chapter 28 is called To the Tower of Genji.
Or Genji.
Or Genji. When I read this chapter title, I was like, what? What are we doing here? But in the context of this chapter, it makes sense. And now I remember it as well, in hindsight. Take it away, Joe.
Right. So, like Billy said, they make camp out there afterwards because it's too late now. The sun is setting. They're not going to be traveling through those hills at night. So they set up 2 camps, obviously, because Faile's group has to camp separately. Even after all of that making up and realize, like seeing her pained face as she tried to heal him and fix his wounds, they're still in separate camps. I've even got a little picture here of a roll's eyes. It's very good. Like,
but
Jesus.
also, they are now out of the ways. No need for Loial to be the guide anymore. Not bound by any kind of promise or oath that Loial had made to Faile. His end of the bargain is complete. They are now just a group of people in the Mountains of Mist.
And that does come up. And Perrin says to him, like, listen, just stay with the girls, please.
Okay.
Like, just for one more night. Like, this will blow over. Like, literally does the next day. So yeah, they're in their 2 camps. They make some fire. Of course, they have a braai. They have some braai brokies. some gas, and then some
Jody,
biltong.
you're just doling out those callbacks here. Explain to people what these things are.
No, and of course, flush it all down with the Clippies and Coke. And I'm going to go back. I'm just fucking with everybody. So they make a fire and they have some bread and some cheese and some what the Americans refer to as beef jerky. The rest of us would call it biltong. And water to wash it down. There's no brandy and Coke available, unfortunately. So the women are chatting and laughing loudly. They've had too many Savannah dries. Okay, I'll stop now.
Stop.
So, but they are like over boisterous to try and make a point, whispering and then laughing raucously. And poor old Loial is, embarrassed beyond words. His ears are drooping. His tufts are drooping. Everything on him is drooping. He's very droopy. He's not loving it. Gaul asks if this is where the legendary Manetherin stood, and if Perrin is Manetherin's blood, and he's like, "Yep, this is basically where it is." And I suppose technically we are, but we're all farmers and shepherds now. We're not great warriors. And Gaul's like, whatever, man. I've seen you and the one they call Matt and Rand fight. I've seen you dance the spears. But if you insist you're not warriors, then whatever, I'll believe you. But he's not buying it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and the Aiel, they know much of the wetlands. He said, oh, no, he's read books from peddlers that have come by. And I was like, as shocked as Perrin as well. Like, oh, really? Like, these guys know about it. And he's read about rivers. He says it in inverted commas, rivers and mountains and forests and things like that, And with the sparse area that they are in at the moment with just a few trees around them is what he would have thought a forest was. Perrin then tells Gaul about the ravens. And of course, then they suspect there's a connection between them and the Trollocs. This is no coincidence, all right?
Nope.
Perrin decides he'll confirm this theory in the wolf dream. So Gaul takes the first watch with instructions to kick him awake should the need arise. Like, why kick him? Like, Perrin chooses those words. Just, you can just, like shake my shoulder or call my name. No, kick me in the ribs, please. So maybe your theory is correct. Perrin likes the violence.
He does.
He does. All right. So there they go. They're in the wolf dream. Well, Perrin's in the wolf dream. And he appears first, like the overwhelming urge of wolfiness overtakes him, and he appears as a wolf. But he's like, no. And he quickly reasserts his beefy boy appearance. And the hammer is at his side. It quickly flickers to the axe when he realizes it, but then get back and forms back into the hammer. And he thinks about how weird this place is. And just as he's thinking that, a window appears in the sky where he sees Rand laughing madly in a swirling storm with tiny dragons flying all around him. He then sees a vision of Nynaeve and Elaine hunting a strange and dangerous beast among twisted and shadowed buildings. This is their Tanchico episode, I imagine, what the strange shadowed beast was. But anyway, and then he also sees Matt with his Ashandare, and finally Egwene and Amis looking surprised to see him there. They're looking back at him going, who the hell's this oak? And behind them, he sees the white tower crumbling stone by stone. So he's well aware of what's going to happen there. Somebody on Twitter, I'm so sorry, we'll have to put this in the comments section or something, mentioned that if they were going to cut something in the show, like cut out Faile, for example, who would hook up with Perrin, they always thought that Perrin and Egwene would make a really, really cool couple. And then they would literally be a dream team. And I was like, oh, awesome. That would be awesome. Because they spend a lot of time in the beginning in book one traveling together after they get split up.
It's true.
Like him and Egwene have this like connection. And they're both awesome dreamers. Like I was like, wow, that is a really cool idea. So for the show, like they cut some characters and made those two hook up. That'd be interesting to see. So
sure.
Perrin reaches out to Hopper, but there's no response, which he thinks is very weird because there's always wolves in the wolf dream. So he leaps a few kilometers. And this is what we were talking about earlier about like, why don't they just, cruise across to Shara and see what's happening there in the wolf dream? So he's like, he takes a step and suddenly he's kilometers away from where he was. And he's like, whoa, shit, this is awesome. This is way better than just walking everywhere. He's amazed. So he jumps down to where he saw the arrows coming up and killing the hawk and where the ravens came from. But there's no sign of the ravens. There's no sign of anything there. So he keeps jumping in search of, more signs and more wolves, which he can't sense at all. So he's going in the direction basically of the two rivers, looking and calling out for Hopper along the way. He sees all like ancient ruins as well. There's all these little like signs of humanity. Like he finds no recent signs of humans, but he does find like what statues of people, of men and women, covering an entire mountainside. I'm wondering if this is not like what's that mountain in the United States?
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore. Like all the president's heads on it or something. And he also sees huge letters carved into the cliff face. And I was like, what is that? Like at the Hollywood sign or something from like thousands and thousands of years ago. But no wolves. Like nothing at all. And he's like, yeah, there's always wolves. Something is very wrong. And when he stops at on top of one of these mountains, he looks down and he sees a man, which we know to be Slayer. A tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired man who seems very familiar to him. And we'll delve into this right now since it's no longer spoilers. But this is Isom. So what I understand is that when Slayer is in the wolf dream, he's Isom. He appears as Isom, but when he's in the real world, he appears...
Mostly.
Okay, he can decide. He can change. All right.
Yeah.
But when
he can change his appearance in the world of dreams. But if he wants to be either one in the real world, he has to change in the world of dreams and then step out. He can't change in the real world.
Okay. Well, all right. Did not remember that. Thanks for the
I
update.
read that recently.
All right. So anyway, he says he recognizes him. He seems familiar that because Isom is Lan's cousin.
Mm-hmm.
So he reminds him of Lan.
Luke is Rand's uncle.
Yes. So Perrin also smells him as cold, not quite human. And Slayer at this point notices him, kind of hesitates for 1 second, and then flees. And I was reading up about Isom a little bit, and Lord Luke and all of that. So apparently when Isom fled, he went north of the wall, and he grew up in the town, where there are Trollocs and Dreadlords and all
dark
kinds
friends
of dark friends and all these people. And also that's where where all the Aiel men who learn they can channel flee north to go and fight the shadow and die in the fight, basically. And some of them are turned and end up living in this town. And they have like there's differences, like they have red veils instead of black veils, and when they kill you, they unveil themselves instead of veiling themselves to show you their face. I was like, "Whoa!"
And don't they like file their teeth or something?
Yes, the ones that, because not all of them end up being channelers or something along those lines. There's some Aiel men up there that aren't channelers, but the ones that are and are turned against their will file their teeth down to fangs, all of their teeth. Yeah, some pretty crazy places. Everything is fucked up.
Yep,
indeed. So anyway, Slayer has fled, seeing Perrin, and Perrin follows. So they're both streaking across the landscape, from the top of mountain peak to mountain peak, covering vast distances in those massive leaps. And before, when after the first leap, at least, when Perrin lands where Slayer was, he sees the corpse of a wolf that's half skinned, and he's like, "Oh shit, this guy's killing wolves in the wolf dream!" Like he didn't even know that was possible. So the pursuit continues. They're going kind of like northeast. I was looking at maps trying to figure out all this stuff. They go through the westward, Watch Hill, River Taryn, and they go all the way to the Tower of Genji, or Genji, however you pronounce it. And that's where basically the pursuit stopped, because Slayer goes inside and disappears. Perrin looks at the tower and he's going around it. There's no doors, there's no entryways, obviously, to get inside. So he wonders how he got in there. And he's going to try and go in himself when Hopper appears and gives him a very strong sending of "Stop, you fool. Don't go there. Bad. Stop. All right? This is a very, very dangerous place." He tells him that Slayer is there in the wolf dream in the flesh. He's not dreaming. So he is literally there, and that's how he is killing the wolves. There's some sort of connection with that. And if he kills you in here, that's it. You're dead, buddy. You're not coming out of that. So he's explaining this to him a little bit as well. And from behind Perrin, he hears a woman's voice, which startles him. And it's old Brigitte, Silverbow. We know this now, but as for first-time readers, I imagine you're like, "Who the hell is this woman?" She warns him about the tower as well. Like, yeah, stay away. That's a bad place. Like her description as well is like, it's not evil like the Dark One is evil, the Elfin or the Finns at least, but they are so different from mankind that they might as well be the same thing, I thought, oh, that's
Yeah.
a cool way of describing it. Like, there's no way you can understand it, so they're just going to kill you.
Yeah. You can't relate to them. Your goals are not the same. They are
Yeah.
different enough to the point of it doesn't matter what their goals are. They are a threat.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it. Just stay far, far away from that tower. There's a moment where he notices something silver, her bow obviously, flickering in the light underneath her coat, and she covers it up within a second, notices that he noticed, and is like, "You've got some sharp eyes on you there, Mr. Golden Eyes."
Mm-hmm.
He asks her if she's Aes Sedai, but she laughs. Like, how many times in the story, whenever one of our intrepid group meets someone they don't know, like they can't judge who they are, like, "Are you Aes Sedai?" Got to be Aes Sedai. And she's laughing, and she's like, "No. I only came to warn you of the tower, despite the rules or the precepts, as she calls them as well." And he's like, "Who are you? What rules?" Like, it's all very confusing. He tells her that Hopper said the same, and like the tower is dangerous and they should stay away. And she's surprised, like, whoa. And she looks down at Hopper so she can see Hopper and him, and she's surprised that he can speak to wolves. And he's like, wow, this is an ancient thing that's coming again. She gives him a breakdown of the fins again. We've done that already, so we won't go into there, and also just relates it to the Snakes and Foxes game. Like, I assume, have you played that game? And it gives him that speech about iron to bind and fire to blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. She warns him to stay out of Tel Arenriad just in general, which is obviously not going to happen.
Nope.
And she mentions, because he asks her about Slayer, and she goes, yeah, she knows of him. He's new. Like, he's kind of new to the world of dreams, but the evil that is in him is ancient. All right. Then she realizes, of course, that she's being super chatty and realizes, wait, are you Taviran? Because I've hung around with some Tavirans before. They kind of loosen your tongue because I've like told you way too much. Like, I shouldn't even approached you or made myself visible or said anything from the beginning, but handy being Taviran, you get a lot of information dumps from time to time. So before Perrin can actually find out who she is exactly, he sees a shadow out of the corner of his eye fall down behind him, and he turns quickly and abruptly, but there's nothing there. And when he turns back, she is gone. Now, Moritz, before we started this, you were saying something about this being the shadow of Gaidel Kane?
I think so, because Perrin says the shadow looks like it's carrying two swords on its back, and Gaidel Kane
I did not read that.
to do that.
I may have read those words, but they did not stick in my brain.
Oh, God. Am I setting myself up here? Is that not what it says?
Okay, I'm going to carry on. You go look in the book. All right, so
consult the scriptures.
Please do. He asks Hopper what he thought of this strange woman, and Hopper's like, what woman? What are you talking about? You were making noises at the wind, he says. And I'm thinking during this whole conversation, was Hopper just lying there patiently waiting for Perrin to stop talking to himself, basically? Like, he did not say anything. He's just like, well, crazy humans, I suppose they just, make noises at the wind from time to time. But he tells her, well, look, anyway, this woman, she was real and she agrees with you. And Hopper's like, well, then she's very wise if she agrees with me.
Quick interjection.
Yes?
There was no one there, but he had seen it. The shadow of a man with the hilts of two swords rising above his shoulders. Something about that image teased his memory.
All right. There you go. Proof. Undisputed.
Irrefutable.
So Perrin tells Hopper then of his mission. He says, look, I've come home. Family's in danger. Town's in danger. This is what I'm doing. This is my plan. Hopper tells him to avoid going home. There are no wolves here. That Slayer walks the dream. It's too dangerous. Everyone, later on in the chapters as well, like, Perrin, get out of here. Like, this is bad time to be here. But of course, Perrin doesn't listen. He's not going to change his mind. And Hopper's like, yeah, fine, whatever. I'm leaving. And he leaves him with some awesome wolf words that I will quote. We will run together in the last hunt. And may you know good hunting and she's to give you many cubs. Like, sweet. We all understand. Nice. Thanks for the good wishes, Hopper. So Perrin wakes up and takes over the watch from Gaul. Faile is doing the same in her camp at the same time. She's also woken up and she'll be taking over. He warns Gaul that things are far worse in the two rivers than he had thought. And Gaul's like, yeah, they usually are, if you plan for the worst, then every surprise is pleasant.
Yes.
And now that we've seen what the development of the Aiel has been, typical Aiel response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
So
think that's bad?
yeah, you should go to these
Listen to
Rhuidean.
this.
Go check out what these town can show you. So the chapter ends with old Perrin sitting there thinking, Slayer, the ravens, the shadow spawn, something is amiss, and that's it.
Yeah. You got any thoughts there, Vil?
No, I think Joe started well there. Not much I can add on to that one.
No, in all four of these last chapters, it's very much like, again, just very immediate story. Not a lot of ramifications and like links to other things. Except for the Tara Genji stuff and the Birgitta.
I think there was a lot. Birgitta, Tara Genji, you've got Slayer. It's Slayer hasn't really been introduced for new reader yet. It's just
in this whole section, he
there's a
becomes
little bit of
a big thing. Hey, I picked up there that Bear wants Gaul to go to Rhuidean.
Oh yeah, super important.
Gaul is clan chief material.
Yeah.
Props, go Gaul. I also enjoyed the fact that Birgitta says to Perrin that he has a bannerman's courage, when at Faile he carried the dragon banner, where Birgitta also fought. She has seen him carry a banner.
Does she remember him?
I don't think so. She doesn't act that way.
Yeah.
Maybe their memory is affected, but I mean, she was there at the 100 Heroes of the Horn. Perrin walks over and uses his axe to chop down a thing, and he puts the banner on it, and he rides with the dragon banner. So he is literally a bannerman in that battle at Faile.
All right, then.
Shall we move along?
Let's do it.
You ready, Willem, for chapter 29?
I am.
That's not very convincing.
You gotta set the tone with this chapter. I'm not going to be stoked about this one.
It's rough going. So chapter 29 is called Homecoming. Willie, if you would be so kind.
Now, Perrin been traveling with the party now for the 3 odd days that it took them to clear the mountains and get down to the valleys. And while Perrin is riding, he's got deep thought about his family and sort of lists through who is his family on the farm, which we didn't really, because you don't meet parents and Emond's in the beginning. They all live outside of the village, quite far away, too far for a casual travel. So he saw his parents only feast days and big events. Because he moved to be a blacksmith in town and took up an apprenticeship. So he's the first boy out of the house and not going to become a farmer.
How old is it? Like at 15 or something, he moved to town away from the farm and now hardly sees his family at all.
So he goes through and lists his mom and his dad, obviously. He's got Adora, his elder sister, Dizelle, and Pietrum. Adora would be 16 and ready to braid her hair. Dizelle is 12 and Pietrum is 9. Then Uncle Edward, Aunt Magda, Aunt Nayan, and the great Auntie Eslin, plus some other cousins from his
random
father's brother's side, unnamed cousins. But it's like a homestead of extended family on this farm where they farm exclusively away from it. They finally reach Quarry Road, and we're back into familiar territory.
Hey, Quarry Road.
Perrin knows exactly where he is, and he's bracing going to Tam's farm now. But before he even reaches the farm, he can smell, this farm's burned down. I can smell the char on it. So he's not surprised when they sort of turn the corner and find the farm to pieces, gates on hinges hanging, 1 month or more's weed growth up against everything. The sides are rusted. There's been no one there for a while. The maidens and Gaul do a quick lap of the farm, and Gaul already picks up some valuable information. Like, firstly, no man died yet, so Tam didn't die yet. Secondly, some sheep were killed. So yes, it must have been a Trolloc attack, because who's going to kill sheep? and some ran off. But the tracks of 2 men or women came back at a later stage, rounding up the surviving sheep and taking them away to the north, or to a direction. I can't recall exactly what direction, which made me think this might be Tam and Aiel coming back later to get and salvage what they could salvage from the place and to move off. And I mean, sheep. They, good up for Gaul and his tracking skills. I mean, it's been a month. But I suppose the wetland does make it easy to track where there's mud. Faile then asked Perrin if this is where his family lived, and all she got was a harsh no. Kind of like his words is now still biting at her, and he's still got this idea in his head that he's going to go and die. The plan is set for the night that they'll camp close to where they are, close to the farm, and Perrin does so deliberately so that he can leave the morning early and go and do his own little reconnaissance at Emond's field with Gaul. So they, Gaul and Perrin, have their separate camps still, not invited back to the lead party camp. And Perrin didn't sleep through the night, and sort of an hour before dawn, not sunrise, so it's wee hours of the morning, they decide to hit the road and get into Emond's field. Sort of the same time Rand would have left with Tam to take Brandy in with Bella. Just
simpler times.
Yeah,
simpler times. They are seen by one of the maidens. Now, Perrin couldn't even see who it was, with the Bain or Chiad, but they luckily didn't rouse Faile to because she would have obviously made a big noise there about that then. So they mission up, and sort of early hours of the morning when the farmers start stirring, Perrin and Gaul enter sort of the village, but Perrin doesn't want eyes on him. So he heads towards the east of the village and sort of through the wine spring, actual spring, and back down to the wine spring inn where they can hit the back door. Enters through the back door into the kitchens, and he can smell all the great smells of home, honey cakes and baking and good wives baking. It's like being back at home. Everything smells good. He then sees Bran and Merrin in the common room. Bran rubbing his head, going through papers, looking all malely stressed. And he just decides to walk in and announce himself, and is still Mistress Alvia, and to Bran all the formalities. It's me, Perrin, and just met with absolute gasps and shock. And but Perrin realizes that maybe he should have introduced the Aiel man that's with him over there.
Yeah,
and does so. And there's quite a formal introduction where Marin does a very formal shade and water for you to Gaul, and he's like, no, well, I just seek permission to protect your roof. And she's like, well, only on one condition, that you do it at my she can basically say, yes, you can defend my house now.
He calls her roof mistress.
Roof mistress, yeah.
And
he offers her a gold piece of work in a bowl, which is more wealth than in the village at all.
Yeah.
But just, this is for accepting me in here.
Have some stolen loot.
Have some stolen. Perrin thinks that, like, she wouldn't be too stoked if she knows that was stolen in Tia. Stolen for the fifth.
Yeah, the High Lords from Tia, they don't need this anymore.
They don't need that anymore.
Use it as a spittoon, whatever.
Yeah, so they have a quick little catch up. But Marin is very quick on saying to Perrin, like, you got to get out of here. Like, your blood is wanted. And he's like, no, well, that's exactly why he's here, because he doesn't want his family to be in danger. And he wants to, he's going to hand himself over, and that way he'll keep his family safe. And before they could say anything to him, the door is kicked in, basically, and in rolls two Aiel maidens of the spear and Faile judo chopping. And she goes straight straight for Perrin. No hellos, no introductions. Just that this was your stupid plan, you stupid lummox. Wool brain, no head, and just keeps going at him. And 10 minutes later, she's still chewing his ears off when Merrin then says, Perrin, can I ask you to introduce your companions and this lovely young woman that thinks so highly of you? And then she goes red-faced, shied about her tavern wench ways in the common room of Emonsfield pub. But she is then formally introduced to Faile and the Bain and Chiad, who has exact same formalities, also offering a gift to seek the protection or to seek the permission to be able to protect the roof mistress's roof. And and poor Bran is just walking around rubbing sweat off his head. Aiel every second word. Like, now there's 3 Aiel. Look out the windows. There more outside in the streets. What's happening here? But the exchange then comes after Merrin took charge and sat both the Aiel woman, the 2 maidens, and Faile down with tea that they can actually carry on. Like, okay, cool. You've had your little episode now. Calm down. Let's have a discussion with this boy. But Brandon tells Perrin that through all of this, Perrin initially was given a cup of brandy to sit. And when the news broke to him that the farm has already burned, he's realized he squashed the cup like in his hand. And he's like, okay, well, where is my family? I mean, they're going to need help to rebuild. Everything needs to be rebuilt. And Bran said to him, Perrin, they're all dead, my boy. And Perrin is in disbelief. It's like, dead? No, they can't be. And that's when he crumpled the cup. And they realized him. And Perrin saying, are you sure? Adora, Dazelle, Piet, my mom, all of them. Your auntie and uncle too, your cousins. I helped bury them on the low hill under the apple trees. And Mirren's like, so no, it was Trollocs that got them on the farm. One of the farms that was hit by one of these Trolloc raids. And Bran explains then to Perrin that Tam and Abel is on the run. Matt's mom and sisters are alive, and that they have also been captured by the White Cloaks. But they said the discussion goes straight like, Perrin, you need to get away from here. Like, you're not going to bring them back by you handing yourself over. Like, and more some information about the White Cloaks. They know a lot about Perrin. They ask about him. Bornwald himself is asking about him. And Paden Fane is there. But he doesn't answer to Fane or Paden Fane anymore. He's now Ordith. And and Perrin's like, well, that's your dark friend right there. That's the man that's making all of this happen. And then they get to the talk of, well, the White Cloaks are kind of protecting them at the moment now. That with White Cloaks there, the Trollocs are kept at bay. So they don't particularly want the White Cloaks gone. And then Bain pipes up like, well, you don't get wolves to protect you from a lion, or you don't get lions to protect you from wolves. Like, you'll end up in the other one's belly anyway. So it's kind of silly. And then talk goes to Lord Luke, who's now in the area that has made himself of use to the people. He came in as a hunter of the Horn, and everyone speaks so highly of him. And he was when the hunter of the Horn situation is raised, Perrin's thoughts trail to, do you know him, Faile? And still wanting to tell Bran and Merrin that, she's a hunter for the Horn as well. That's where she jumps up, Faile, and says, like, I have had enough. And she walks around the table to Perrin and grabs his head and into her midriff and saying, your mom is dead. Your dad has died. your brothers, your sister, your brother, your sisters, your cousins, your auntie, your family, they are all dead. You can't change that even by dying. Let yourself grieve. Don't hold it inside, where it will be allowed to fester. And he grabbed Faile's arms with the intention to, just shift her out of the way. But he realized that all that was keeping him up was the grip on her arms from his hands. And before he realized he couldn't stand and carry his own weight, he was sobbing into her dress like a baby. All I can say is, and all he could say is, I couldn't get here any faster. And Faile saying to him, I know. And as she held his head, it was like she was stroking the tears out of him.
She stroked the tears out of me.
Yeah. Heavy. Oh, Robert Jordan not holding back on the character killing and the death of loved ones or anything. Not pulling any punches.
Yeah, it's just to have another red wedding, but kill a whole family.
A little kid, it's like 9 years old.
Well, look, Trollocs, so I hope that it was Trollocs and not Bain. Pain.
Yes.
Or Deeth.
I mean, it could have been both, right? Faine could have been there with Trollocs.
Yeah, or even his white cloaks and his band of merry old grey cloaks.
He is the bloodhound after Perrin. Oh, I guess Bornhold actually also has a really, really big target on Perrin's back because of his dad. But yeah, there's no comfort or solace to be gathered from
nothing.
That scenario whatsoever. I mean, I know they try and paint it as like at least it was Trollocs and it was, it would have been over quick, or I don't know what rationale they used to say at least it was the Trollocs and not the White Cloaks. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's fucking harsh. Yeah, and at least Perrin does grieve over it, at least for a short time. Not that his crying session was a short time, but like it takes much longer time than one cry to actually properly process all that stuff.
Good information that we got out of there is just where the camp is, that White River, or what's a white?
Which camp? At Watch Hill or Tarrant Ferry?
Watch Hill. No, the main camp is at Watch Hill.
Yeah, sort of halfway between Tarrant Ferry and Emond.
Yeah, and they've obviously got the Matt's mom and sisters that's being held, along with Master Lewin and
Elspeth.
So how they managed to get her, she must have taken a few hours out with her.
Yeah.
And there's now patrols that's riding in between. It's not safe to move around as easily as you want to. And they have got Baden Faine has put gold on his family's head.
A shit ton of it as well.
A shit ton of it. Like he's just pieing for blood.
But Tam and Abel and the merry men off in Nottingham Forest.
They also put a few arrows in some white cloaks.
From a great distance, if I know Tam.
Yeah.
It's occupational hazard. If you're a white cloak,
Hunting Tam.
People will put arrows in you.
I'll keep trying. Is that the end of that chapter, Vil?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of the chapter, yeah. It ends very, very sad. Like a long chapter with info, and then less than half of a page to absolutely break your heart.
Yeah.
That's what I want to mention there. The heartbreak. We didn't even meet any of the characters from his family. We don't know them at all. And the impact of their death hit me so hard. And it's just like writing techniques, you don't have to build relationships with every single character. You just build a relationship with Perrin. And then you feel his pain so viscerally, I literally, I had tears in my eyes. I also stopped reading at that. Like I had to put down.
Man, I was weeping.
Yeah, man.
I was weeping.
Tears
sitting
rolling
there like,
down my cheeks.
Man, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Bunch of weepy boys over here.
Oh,
But yeah, it's a real kick in the nuts, eh?
yeah. And I mean, children, the great aunt, the mom, the dad, like everyone.
Like I said, not pulling punches here at all. It's rough going.
Indeed.
I had one other note here. Gaul makes a comment along the lines of, if a maiden loves you, you cannot escape her, however hard you run.
Yeah.
Bad news, Gaul. She's coming.
Prophetic words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, should we move on from the heartbreak and start the road to recovery with the next chapter?
No, we're going to start with the heartbreak still in this chapter.
Okay. And that chapter is chapter 30, and it is called Beyond the Oak, which last time I had no recollection of. The oak? What the fuck? And then reading it like, yes, of course. Like so many other things in the series. Now I remember.
All right. I didn't remember it. But anyway, we pick up with Perrin having a long, long cry. The Afrikaans for it would be snot and trane. And the English for that would be snot and tears. It is, he has a very, very long cry. And so did I, and Moritz and Willie cried with him. Everyone else is gone when he takes his face away from Faile's snot and tear-drenched dress, and notices like everyone's gone, and he's thankful that he had some privacy to kind of just let this all out. He's still embarrassed though that she had to see him like this, and I'm like, dear God, Perrin, like if she can't see it, then who else is allowed to see you like this, you know? But anyway, he's done with that. He's got it out of his system for now. So he at this point as well now, and Faile makes him realize it as well, that now surrendering to the White Cloaks is stupid. They know about your family. They know about Rand. We know there's Trollocs in the area. We know that Payton Fane is here. You giving yourself up to the noose is not going to help anyone. So she makes him understand that, and he's like, yes, I get it. This is a dumb idea. It's stupid. Like, even if I die, they're still going to go after Rand's family. They're going to go after Matt's family. They're never going to stop. So that plan is out the window. Thank God that part of the story is now over. All right. So instead, they plan a rescue mission. Dun, 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 dun. They are going to go into the White Cloak camp, as previously planned, but not to die now, but to go and rescue the Luhans and Matt's mother and sisters. And, and also kill some Trollocs while they are at it. And maybe enlist the help of this Lord Luke that everyone's been chatting about. So Faile is stoked. She's super happy that all of this is over, that their tiff is now over, and we can all get on with the story.
Thank fuck.
This is the end of it, people. For now. Before we get another little sidetracked
round two
of the Perrin and Faile story. But for now, we can leave this all behind us. So they start planning. All right. They are 6 of them, if you include Loial as well. Of course, he's going to join them. 8, if they can find old Tam and Abel, who he says are much, much better at the bow than he is. Faile nods skeptically. Like, sure, buddy. I've seen you shoot those dark hounds from 500 paces, right in the eye. She can't believe that anyone's better than him. And he's like, no, seriously, these guys are way better than me. And then if we can get Lord Luke in as well, we'll be 9 people. I just hope that this Lord Luke is not another idiot hunter for the horn, because I have met 2 of them before when I met old Gaul, and they were dumbasses. So if they are, they're not allowed to join. He's not allowed to join us if he's another one of these guys. Faile then suggests that visiting his family farm might be a good idea for him as well now. And he's like, no. First things first, I can't. I'll just break down again. Like, we need to sort some shit out. First thing we need to do is we need to find Tam and Abel. At this point, Master Elvira pops his head into the common room again from the kitchen. And he's like, there's an ogier in my kitchen having a cup of tea that is tiny in his gigantic hands. Would you mind coming in here for a moment? So they decide to move as well. as fast as possible because someone might tell the White Cloaks about them any moment. So this is already, they're in the kitchen now. They've moved in. So they come in the kitchen and there's 3 Aiel sitting on the floor along with Loial also sitting on the floor just because he can't stand. He's too tall. He can't fit in there. And they're all just having tea. Thought it's great.
Isn't Loial sitting on the floor with his arm like resting on a table
On
or
the
a
table.
countertop or something, drinking tea out of a bowl?
Which
Like,
still
not
looks
Yeah,
like a tiny
eventually-
little thing in his hands.
No, Perrin walked in thinking, but that teacup doesn't look that small. And then he realizes, no, they gave him a bowl.
Yeah. Of course, Mistress Elvira is still trying to pretend that everything is normal, everything is fine. But the Ogier, really, that got her. Like, she can pretend Aiel are normal, but the Ogier, no, she can't hide that. So Master Elvira tells them that Tam and Abel are somewhere out hiding in the westward, but suggests again, like, just leave it. Forget this crazy plan of yours and get out of here because they're going to hang you if they find you. It's too dangerous. And he's like, whatever. They decline. They join the others in some light snacks in the kitchen. I think they are having cheese and pickles. And the idea of just watching Bain and Chiad sitting on the floor with a cup of tea and some cheese and pickles is just hilarious. Loial gives his condolences to Perrin because obviously they found out now that his whole family is dead and offers to sing to the apple trees under which his family is buried. And I thought that's so cool. And I don't remember seeing that later on, but I hope he does fulfill that promise later on. So Perrin tells him about the plan, leaving out the part about the Trollocs for the moment. There's enough on their plates as is. Everyone's on board. Duh, obviously. Mistress Elvira thinks they are fools, of course, but offers to help them find somewhere to lay low. Master Luhan says, yeah, why not the old sick house? The old one. Not the old one, but the one that we had before that. And Mr. Salvia shoots him like a glance, like, shut up. But he doesn't know. We do later on, of course. So they split up into smaller parties. They decide, okay, moving through the town as one giant group with an Ogier is going to draw far too much attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to split up into smaller groups. Mr. Salvia insists on leading the way. They're like, no, we know the way. And she's like, no, I will go with you. I will show you the way. So they're like, fine, whatever. Bran's like, why can't I do it? And she's like, listen, you are the mayor. People are going to notice if you are walking through town and through the woods and stuff. You're going to draw too much attention. Let me do it as well. All right. Everyone's going to meet at the oak tree, which is where the title of it comes down. So this oak tree was split by lightning years ago. It's very distinctive. They'll meet there. The Aiel are going on their own little mission on the side. They're like, no, we'll find the tree by ourselves. And of course they will. They're not going to get lost.
Without being seen.
No, without being seen, of course. And Loial as well is going to go with Matt and Faile. And they'll meet up there later. And Perrin
and Faile.
That's it. I just want to hear from Matt. Here. Matt, come on, Matt, where are you? The plan for disguising Loial is to put him in a cloak. Just genius. He'll just look like Loial in a cloak. So then they got great plans. Everyone's splitting up. They're going to go there. They're going to do this. It's all great. But before they even get underway, old Sen Bui turns up to ruin everybody's plans. He's snooping around the back of the inn, looking at the horses. Sneaky little bastard that he is. And he's interested, he sees like Loial's horse. He's like, holy shit, who came in on this thing? And turns around just as they were coming out the back door and sees Loial and freaks out. Of course, he thinks he's a Trolloc at first glance, but of course, Mistress Elvira threatens him with violence into silence. He recognizes Perrin as well. So this kind of cloak thing is not really working. They all got cloaks on. It's, like men hiding in the tower.
Yes.
Their disguises need work. But these cloaks are not working. Marin deals out some more insults and threats to kind of get Sen to shut up and not give them away. Perrin has to stop Faile from murdering him because he feels her tense, and when he looks down, she's got a knife in her hands. It's like, Jesus, chick, just calm down for a second. This is old Sen. He's an idiot. He may be an idiot, but he's not so dangerous that we have to kill him. Just chill out for a second.
Perrin has brought a couple of wolves of his own into the middle of this town. It's like he's walking killing machines.
Yeah, like, Sen, you don't know what you've stepped into, buddy. No. Just shut up and leave. Faile is also very impressed on how well Marin has handled the men in this group so far, and mentions it. And Perrin quickly steps in before she gets any ideas. It's like, whoa, look at the time. We got to go. It's time for everyone to move. And everybody starts on their journey. So after a short journey of barely getting noticed, apparently when they were moving, everyone was lunchtime. So nobody was really out. A few kids in the fields, watching the sheep and whatnot. They do get noticed because Loial is a giant on a giant horse. And we get to the oak tree where the Aiel are already there waiting, obviously, with Mistress Elvia herself. She insists they go the rest of the way on foot and to leave the horses. And they're like, fine, okay, woman, we'll do whatever you say. Loial along the way is very impressed with the trees. He does make mention of the beautiful trees that are in this area and how tall and beautiful and luscious they are. And suddenly Perrin smells a man. The Aiel tense as well. But Marin tells him, okay, everybody just chill out, because they hear like a rustle and he smells a smell, and two warders just melt out of thin air in front of the path. It's Thomas and Ivan from the show. Hey, guys. This is the first time we see them. All right. They are with arrows nocked and drawn, pointing it at them. And even though Marin is trying to calm everything down, these warders do not take their arrows off anyone. The Aiel do not stop tensing, ready to attack or run or jump or do whatever Aiel do. Faile has a knife out already. The warders make note of it as well. Like, oh, what a strange group. An Ogier, some Aiel, and a feisty woman with a knife. And Perrin turns around. She's got her knife out, ready to throw. And he's like, oh, yeah, you better watch out for her. She's good with that.
Yeah.
So it turns out that old Marin has been hiding some Aes Sedai in the old sick house, which is why she gave a glare to her husband who mentioned it. And Perrin's like, why didn't you tell us? And why didn't Master Aiel tell us? And he's like, well, he doesn't know. This is women's circle business. Apparently, when the White Cloaks arrived, the Aes Sedai, Verin, and Alana were already in the Two Rivers area. They were in Watch Hill, I think. So when the White Cloaks pulled in, they had to sneak them out. So the Women's Circle between Women's Circle organized something and snuck them out. And now they're hiding in the sick house here in the woods. Perrin is not thrilled at the idea of hiding with some Aes Sedai. He has experience. Marin asks him, like, you're not afraid, or he's like, no. Well, listen, they are Aes Sedai, and then they are Aes Sedai. So I prefer just to avoid them completely. Ivan, during this conversation, has already melted back into the woods, and he's gone back to the Aes Sedai to warn them and tell them what's happening. His skills are impressing the Aiel as well. And Perrin doesn't trust whoever these Aes Sedai are, because at this point in the story, we don't know that it's Verin and Alana, which still would not, even if he knew that, would not fill him with trust anyway.
No, don't think it would.
Met her before, all right? But he figures, hey, man, having two Aes Sedai will be super handy when we go fighting some Trollocs. And those are the thoughts we leave him on as the chapter ends.
Shoo. Do you think Perrin is fixating on killing the Trollocs because of his wolfishness?
I think it's just you don't have Trollocs. You can't leave them running around the Two Rivers, regardless of your wolfishness.
He's not telling anyone about it yet. I don't know. I got the sense that he had this almost like uncontrollable urge to go see to the Trollocs. And it was almost like a wolf instinct.
His first urge is to free his people.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that's fulfilled, and he's got the first bit of the younglings forming with him. They're like, what do we do now? Now.
Which younglings? You have to be careful, because there is a group of people called the younglings.
The youngsters. We'll call these ones the youngsters, because they're not the younglings.
They're not the younglings.
Not Gowans.
Don't they form a band, a group?
Yeah.
Themselves?
The Two Rivers Militia.
And the tour.
Yeah. Two Rivers Militia, what are they called?
The Archers. They get all these young kids to protect the Two Rivers.
Yes, it's his bloodlust for the Trollocs still come.
That happened in the ways as well.
Family matters first.
He put himself in mortal danger just stepping in between Bain and Chiad's arrows to get to the Fade. Yeah. The Neverborn.
Yeah, he had to withdraw the urge to bite its neck physically. And say, okay, now you got a hammer. Just crash its skull with a hammer.
And afterwards, it's like that thing was wielding a sword from Thakandar, a nick from that sword and he'd be dead.
Yeah,
And
so that was
that he...
definitely his wolfishness overtaking. But I think in this instance, the fact that he chose to save the people first, he promised Matt he could look after his mom and sisters. And I think he's just not trying to talk about the Trollocs just yet, not to freak everyone out.
He says something, or he thinks something along the lines of, we can sort out all this other stuff, but there's no way I'm leaving the Two Rivers with Trollocs here.
That's just practical. You don't leave Trollocs in the Two. Why would you just like save the people and then leave Trollocs? Like this, it's just. I mean, sure, when he gets into battle with them, the wolfish hatred of them will definitely take over. But it's just like a logical, practical step to make sure that they're all dead before you leave.
Yeah. So pretty straightforward. They don't mention anything about Alana or Varen here, do they? They only mention the
Not
warders.
yet. This next
And
chapter.
those warders are Thomas is Varen's warder and Ivan is Alana's warder. So I guess you could infer who the Aes Sedai are. Trying to think with the warders would know who Perrin was because Varen and Alana were both in Faldara.
And Perrin traveled with
Varen
from Faldara.
But Thomas wasn't with her.
No, Thomas wasn't.
But there is a bond, and I'm sure she would have told him stuff about where they were and why they were there.
I never knew why he was not around when Varen traveled with them, all the way from Faldara to Falme.
She had to do Black Aja business in between.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't go with her to a lot of places, so he's kind of used to it.
Maybe. Because he knows she's a dark friend. He had to also turn.
Yeah.
Heavy days.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, all I want to talk about is like what's going to happen and like how annoyed I've been with Alana in the past, and like how I think they describe her from when you meet her here. Isn't she still super emotional after the death of her warder or of one of her warders? Was it Ivan that dies? She's an emotional wreck for a long time because of a dead warder. And she also bonds Rand against his will. So I've got this like built-in distrust of her.
Yeah, look, it's not misplaced, this distrust. It's good.
No, it's well earned. And something I read about her, like I'm getting way ahead of myself, but she's an important piece of the puzzle all the way to the very last book.
Yes.
Her bond with Rand, like the Forsaken try to exploit it. So she becomes a pawn in the game all the way to Tom and Gardon.
To the last hunt.
Yes. But man, we all know what's coming here, right? The Battle of Two Rivers.
Yes.
Super, super excited for that.
Well, it doesn't come up, I was on chapter 37 and it still hadn't happened.
It's a lot of toing and froing with the White Cloaks that has to happen.
No, not by 39 yet.
Yeah.
It's the end of the book. It's the grand finale for this one.
Right. Cool.
And then after we've all read that, do check out that Nablus video where he breaks it down.
I have before.
So have I, but I want to read it again. I want to read it and then watch that video again.
Yes. Yeah. Compulsory watching before our next recording for that episode.
Indeed.
So, did you guys remember to pick one single favorite moment in all?
I'm getting good now. Like by episode 32, I now regularly remember to choose a favorite moment.
I'm very proud of you.
It's only taken 2 years.
Why don't you tell us, Jody? What is your favorite moment?
I'm going to read it. I have it right here.
Excellent.
I am still Aiel, Lewin shouted, but they did not look back. He thought he heard Luca crying. The wind rose, picking up dust, and he veiled his face. I am Aiel. That spot. Right.
Oh, yes. That is also mine.
Of course it is.
But it is it's tied for first place with Mandine saying to the Aiel, take me to Rhuidean, Aiel. I will match your courage.
Oh, good Aiel moments. Yes.
I like that Mandine one. Mandine, whatever his name was, because in it he calls the Gen Aiel, so it's this like big moment for the other Aiel to recognize and admit that the Gen are Aiel, and then obviously the line about matching his courage. How about you, Vil?
Well, I'm not going to fanboy out about the Aiel and the long history and all of that. I'd leave that fanboying to you guys to do. Mine is straight and simple. Always back to the good old guy in black, Matt, whose first words after being resuscitated from being dead is those flaming sons of goats.
Yes. They tried to kill me.
Tried to kill me. Tried.
Oh, it's so good, hey. Oh God, I love Matt. He is so consistent, irrepressible.
You keep saying that this is where it gets good with Matt, but it just keeps getting better and better and
It
better.
does, hey. It's so great. I had a couple honorable mentions. One of them being Gaul sort of saying to Perrin, okay, you think you're not a warrior, but I've seen you dance the spears and Randall Thor and the one they call Matt. You've descendants of Manetherin, for sure.
The blood of Manetherin is strong with these people.
Oh, yes. And another one being that scene of the Sharom collapsing down on the column down. Just like it is just so different and so weird. Like I'm picturing like things like, sci-fi cars flying through the sky and like, a completely different cityscape. Like who knows what the buildings look like, chora trees everywhere, and then this huge floating sphere, which I think is also a pretty consistent motif in the video game Destiny. Like Destiny also has this massive sphere floating above a city. Seems like a lot of pop culture references coming from the Wheel of Time. Memento, Destiny.
Yeah. Nolan definitely stole it from
Definitely. Adrian wrote in and she said her favorite moment was Loial sitting in Mistress Elvira's kitchen trying to sort of not look imposing but still shocked, and like actually I've got her email here, hang on. She says trying to simultaneously shrink, look polite, seem harmless, and discreetly look around for books. Yeah, it's real good. Okay, so to our listeners, send in your favorite moments, send your theories, your callbacks. You heard us do it tonight. We called back to episode 1 when Moraine and Tom met each other, the Glee Man. Wow, that's really taking it back. So write in any theories, anytime. We are eager to hear. You can tweet us at Blood and Ash Pod on Twitter or follow any of the social media hyperlinks in the episode description. And tune in next time when we will cover chapters 31 through 36. Again, a nice even 6 chapters, starting with chapter 31 called Assurances and chapter 36 called Misdirections. Almost like 2 sides of the same coin, those 2 chapter names. They don't actually tell you anything, but they would lead you down a path of probably some kind of subterfuge. Misdirections, I guess, is exactly that. I assure you, I'll do this thing. I'm going to do something else now.
I like the way you pronounced assurances. Like, assurances? I'm Ron Burgundy?
All right, guys. We've put our listeners through enough. This history lesson has concluded, but we will see them all for some more recreational reading in our next episode. So see you all next time.
Cheers, everyone.
Adios, mi amigos.
Hey!